What's good? What's good? What's goody? It's your buzzing cousin, Ghost Boogie, and Danny Chaz.
Hello, I'm Danny Chaz.
Yeah, man. Welcome in, everyone, to episode 1 and episode 2, depending if you're watching this live right now or if you're watching it back on the replay of YouTube. It's going to be cut into 2 different episodes. But this is the maiden voyage of Blurred Reality Wrestling, brought to you by the usual suspects, B-Boys Underground, the Chilled on Sunday podcast. Much love. Welcome in. Please, everyone, make sure you follow us on YouTube and on Twitch. Blurred Reality Wrestling on Twitch and on YouTube. Again, that's Blurred Reality Wrestling. You're going to want to watch and stay tuned. We'll be live on all of those. We're currently live on our new Twitch channel, Blurred Reality Wrestling. We're going to be raiding in from our individual channels because we're live on Danny Chaz's channel. We're live on Ghost Boogie's channel. And we're live on Blurred Reality Wrestling, that channel too. So we need you to like so we can get affiliated like ASAP. Man, Danny Chaz, we got this dope beat from Herbs One, man. What you think about this?
It's fucking dope. I'm sitting there freestyling in my head while I was waiting to go on. I've got fucking chills going up my spine. If
you got bars.
If you ain't following Herbs One on Instagram, you're fucking up. You're missing out. You don't know what you're missing. It gives away far too much, and you ain't around to collect it. You're messing up. Follow Herbs One on Instagram. He's the man.
Yes, that is Herbs One, and then of course he's one half of Mad Herbs with Mad Ways, our usual suspect brother, and B-Boys Underground brother right there. Salute to him, and salute to Mad Herbs, but salute to Herbs One, always coming through. I mean, from day one, man. Like he's always blessed me with some beats, and I'm just happy to have him. So always got to give credit to him where credit is due. And yeah, man, like Danny Chaz, man, I don't know about you, but I am super excited to finally be able to talk about and have some time that we can just sit back and talk about nothing but wrestling, man. Like nothing but wrestling, and just get into it, right? Mm-hmm. So tell me, Danny Chaz.
Yeah, what do you know?
You know, what we want to do is just talk about, I guess, for episode 1, because we were talking about this before and like how we're going to structure it. And I think it's only fair, and we think it's only fair, that we tell you, our audience, why it is that we are doing this and why it's such a big deal to us, right? So let's tell everyone, and I want to know, Danny, tell me your very first memory that you can think of that you can remember watching wrestling.
So for me, it was very, very young, very little. I'm thinking of the house I lived in. I lived in a road called Croydon Road in Canning Town, and I moved out of there when I was about 5 or 6. So it's before then. So I was 4 or 5, and I remember sitting on the floor eating my cereal on a Saturday morning watching cartoons. And then when the cartoons finished, we used to have a program in England called on the I can't remember if it was a BBC or ITV, but it was on one of them channels, one of our free channels, and it was called World of Sport, which they used to have. It would be sporting highlights from different sports from all around the world. And one of the things that came up was wrestling, but it was wrestling in England and Ireland, it was in the British Isles, England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. So I remember sitting there and thinking, "Oh my God, that guy's beating the snot out of the other guy. You know, like I've just been watching cartoons. I'm a little kid, and I'm like,
And how
I'm
old were
seeing,
you again?
the house I was living in. I must have been 4 or 5 like years old because we moved out of there when I was about 6, like 6 years old, and I can vividly see the TV in front of me now, and the room, feel the carpet I'm sitting on, and everything else. And I remember seeing Mick McManus, and there was a lady called Princess Paula, who was his valet, and she used to wear the Native American headdress. So she was
Mhm.
Princess Paula, but she was like Native American, and Mick McManus was like a northern tough guy in England. And I remember him, and I remember Fit Finlay, who was Finlay in the WWE up until very
Mhm.
recently. He was a trainer and a worker all through the Attitude Era in the early 2000s. He used to have a shillelagh, like what Sheamus is running around with now, you know, like the stick with
Mhm.
a ball on the end and that.
Mhm.
And he was the one who brought in Hornswoggle. But I remember when he was when these guys were double young, and William Regal was also there,
Mhm.
who you know as William Regal. We knew him as Steve. I
Mhm.
think it might have been Steve Williams. We knew him
Oh,
as.
he was so he was not wrestling under the monkey or of William Regal over
Not
there.
at first. I think he was Steve Williams and he was Steve Regal, and he was a babyface because he was only young. He was very, very young. I believe he was like in his late teens. And
Mhm.
so we used to have this guy, and he was larger than life. His name was Big Daddy, and he was the main baby face. And he was a great big fat dude. Like, I don't know, like, but he could move, but he was like great big. And he wouldn't put any holds on. He would just throw people into the ropes and then belly flop them, and they would fall down. But he was like the main guy. But because he couldn't work, he would always have the new, fresh, young baby face as his partner, running around doing all the whole match. Then he would come in at the end and finish the match. But yeah, so I've gone off on a tangent. But yeah, the earliest memories I've got of all these characters and sitting in my house in Canning Town on the floor eating frosty flakes
Mhm.
and watching cartoons and then wrestling. And then I remember the cartoons going by the wayside, and I just went to wrestling to come on. it,
Yeah,
it, it took over for me. It took over. But
absolutely.
but we never got American wrestling back then. Like that was our wrestling, was the British wrestling. We only heard about American wrestling, and
Mhm.
yeah. So that was my start. I mean, what was yours? When did it like grab you?
So I'm gonna say the same time that uh the same time that around the same time that you were talking about, it was at least 3, as early as 3. Uh,
Hmm.
and it was the same thing also, um, after cartoons went off, and then also during Sundays, they would have that going, and then sometimes during the week they would have it going, depending on, like, I would pick up a UHF channel, uh, but sitting down in my underwear, eating my breakfast, whether it be cold pizza, cereal, like cookies, dipping in Kool-Aid, whatever. But same thing, man. Watching watching these guys fight and just being like, wow, what is this,
Hmm.
right? And the first people that I remember, and one of the very first wrestlers that I remember, was Dusty Rhodes. And because it was all of the regional broadcasts, so I would flip the channel, and I always thought it was interesting because, I would see Dusty Rhodes on this individual broadcast, like AWA, and then NWA would come on, and he'd be over there, and Ric Flair would be over there. You had the Four Horsemen, all of these guys, the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express, Jim Cornette, all of these heels, and larger than life characters, and and I was just mesmerized by it. And then, you know, entering into when Vince McMahon Jr. took over and started doing their broadcast, because they had their broadcasts, the WWF had their broadcasts, right? And they would be picked up on the UHF channels, right? But they weren't as big. But then I remember the shift in the early 80s. I'm going to say maybe 83.
Mm.
And they started showing up after cartoons, right? And then that was larger than life. And what was presented was extremely just, what is this? And I was hook, line, and sinker. My mom and dad would buy me magazines. I was a huge into magazines and all of those different things and books. Uh, and I remember them getting me the wrestling magazines, or like when I would go to the grocery store, my mom would let me look in the magazine aisle and be able to pick out a magazine, or her best friend managed a bookstore who had a big magazine rack, and I would be able, she'd let me pick out a magazine when I go in there, and I'd pick out either a Kiss magazine, because they had Kiss, right? Those were like the Kiss magazines and the comics and all of
Mm.
that. And as a kid, I was obsessed with the Kiss, the characters and everything. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, that was the first memories that I have of wrestling. It was, and I was hooked from the beginning. From the beginning.
I remember the magazines, but we didn't get them in our corner store or supermarket or things like that. Like we would only see them in a specialized bookshop. Like so,
Hmm.
we would have to go to the high street. I would never sort. I was never seeking them out, but every now and then I'd go, "Ah, that's what I like. That's wrestling. That's what I like." You know, like, and I would see the magazine. In we had a shop. We got a shop called WH Smith's, which is like our main, like it would have been like your Barnes and Noble type thing.
Hmm.
And like as a kid, I would go in there, and it seemed like the wrestling magazines were always tucked behind something else. Like, and there would
Yeah.
only be like one or two, and every like copies of that. And like you said, the fronts were always the faces were always blooded. So I would see them and think, "Whoa, this ain't like the wrestling we've got. I've never seen anyone bleed like." You know, and I remember thinking, all they're doing is bleeding on these American ones because that was what the covers were. So American wrestling become like this taboo thing to like to seek. You know, like it was like, yeah, you see wrestling Sunday when you win a Saturday when you go to school, your mate would go, yeah, and I go, have you seen this American stuff? They're hitting each
Hmm.
other with chairs. They're like hitting each other with the ring bell, and they're in cages, and like it was like you said, it was the larger than life stuff, and we never had it yet. Like we didn't get WWF until satellite TV,
Mm.
which was like I must have been 12 or 13 by the time I could actually like see it on TV. So we was always like seeking out VHSs and stuff like that. And I remember my dad, uh, I've said to you before on the sesh, we'd have people come around in their van and they would be renting and selling VHSs from the back of the van. And they'd come back the next week, collect the films, say, if you want some more, you pay your rental, and then you'd get another one. So it was a mobile rental van.
That's cool though.
Yeah,
I
we'd have had
didn't
a
I didn't
shop at
I
first.
don't remember that, you telling me that, but
Yeah, you
that,
all made fun of it, like, "Oh, would you go around the side door and that's where the porn is?" And,
oh,
"Hey,
that,
look at that."
oh,
We was having,
I
like, one of them
remember that now.
conversations.
But
Yeah.
no, that's crazy though. That is cool. Like that was,
Yeah.
I would have been been really mesmerized by that because I mean we had milk vans, that would
Yeah.
show up, and like the ice cream truck would show up, but to have like free candy van show up and open up
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
all of this VHS, that's dope, man. Or was
I
it
think
what
you'd
what
open
was
the
the
back
format? Was
doors.
it beta? What was it, Betamax,
No,
or was it
Betamax
VHS?
Betamax never took off here at all. It tried
Never at
to.
all.
One or two people got it, and they realised they'd grabbed the wrong format. Like, but
Mm,
in the back of
gotcha.
the guy's van, he would have like. I remember, I can see it now. It was like it was probably like not the milk crates, but like the bread crates, like the big bread truck, what the bakers would bring into the superstores, and it was them full of VHSs. And you'd only looking at the spine, and you'd find like a movie and stuff like that. And because of where we're from and how we are, we could get the banned ones, like the banned videos, like they wouldn't allow in the UK. Like Evil Dead 1 was like considered a video nasty and not for sale here and stuff like that, so we could get them. But I remember it went from there that the guy with a van, and then he had a shop that didn't last. And I remember my dad going around there when they was clearing it out before the liquidators come in and buying like a big box of VHSs, like for
Hmm.
I don't know, probably for nothing. It was either he had it or it got repossessed. And in there was a VHS, and I'm sure it was a Great American Bash, and it
Mm.
was the main event. I remember the main event because I kept rewinding it and watching it again, and it was Ric Flair landed in a helicopter into a baseball field as the end, and it must have been. Well, then again, the VHS could have been 5 years old, so like when I got my hands on it, so it could have been early 80s because it was like a closing down. The place was closing down, so yeah, it was Ric Flair. And he landed it, and I'm sure it was against um one of the blackjacks. So it was like, Bradshaw, whatever line he come from. There was like
Mhm.
Blackjack Mulligan and Blackjack this one and that one. And they all had the cowbell with a rope and wore the chaps and stuff. Because I remember seeing Ric Flair, me and my older brother watching it, and Ric Flair, I remember his hair going from platinum blonde to this red
Wow.
where he had
Yeah,
been cut
because from
open.
the yes.
And we were both like, "Whoa, there is blood in this American wrestling," and that was
Mm.
our like introduction into it.
I got you.
Yeah, I'd like to track that down. I mean, there's only we had a device that we carried around with us all the time that I could find what that match was and where it was, where I could just look it up, like Google it.
Well, I mean, we can Google it right now.
I'm not
Do
going
you
to
want
Google
me?
it now because we'll be
Okay,
looking and
all right.
searching and scrolling. But
Never mind.
maybe for the next episode, I'll look it up
So,
and get a clip of it.
what I do want to take a moment to point out to everybody that's tuned in live on all the individual channels that Danny and I are going to continue to raid the channel that we need you to follow and support, which is Blurred Reality Wrestling on Twitch. We've put the link out, and we are going to continue to raid into that channel. So you can please follow over there and help us monetize that channel and get it up and running.
Mm, we should be able to get that
Um,
quick enough, I'd say, between us.
yeah, man.
That's
So
fine.
yes, make sure you follow Blurred Reality Wrestling, and the link is in
So am
all
I
of our
raiding into it
chats.
now?
Yeah, we just everybody rate in or refresh, and then the folks that are going to continue to join our channels throughout the broadcast, because all of our channels are going to be remaining live. We're going to
Mm.
ask that you please
So we're this blurred reality wrestling is going to become our staple channel after a few weeks of building it up. We're just we slowly going to stream on there and YouTube's.
Correct.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
So, getting back into it, I mean, Maurice, and thank you everybody that is here live on Twitch with us. You guys watching these episodes on YouTube on the replay. We will be live on YouTube coming up here soon. Plus, we'll be live on our Twitch channel as well. So catch us on that. Now, Maurice mentioned that his favorite wrestler was Jimmy Superfly Snuka.
Yeah, I see that.
Miss
Do you
Joy
know what
said
we?
her favorite
Sorry,
was
do you
The
know what we haven't
Undertaker.
done? No,
What?
we haven't done. We haven't acknowledged who's here. We've got some people here in the chat. So
Yeah, let's do
we've
it.
got Birdie, we've got Stew Dog, we've got Richie, we've got Blurred Reality Wrestling. Why don't we follow them? We've got Miss Joy.
Got
We've
Pan
got
Badass
Panda
New Zealand.
Pan Badass. We've got Maurice. We've got Herbs One. What up, Herbs? Thanks for the beat, man.
Herbs.
We were dancing to that earlier. That's fucking excellent.
Yeah, man.
And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Maurice was saying that Jimmy Fly Snooker was his favorite.
Yeah, Jimmy, and then Miss Joy said The Undertaker was her favorite wrestler. Who was your who was I know you like so who was your I'm like who was your favorite wrestler growing up?
Oh man,
Your
it
first
changed.
favorite.
Changed.
It changed. Let's say your very first favorite
Well,
wrestler.
my first one who was I mentioned before. That would be Big Daddy. So he was the baby face of uh, the wrestling I see, the English wrestling, world of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was he was
So
my
the first
first.
one, Big
Yeah, and
Daddy.
he used to fight a guy. His main the main person he would always fight protagonist would be a guy called Giant A Stick. So they found an equally fat man with the same height, and they would just bump into each other basically for an amount of time and just keep running off the ropes and into each other, doing the irresistible force and immovable object over and over again. But yeah, they were my favorites. Who was yours?
So I'm the very first baby face. I really didn't have necessarily an overall favorite that I was dedicated to until Hulk Hogan. Because Hulk Hogan, I had seen him start to wrestle in the AWA territories, uh, and he was on there. And then before he was brought over to WWE, and so he already had me. He already had me, and at that point when they started his run in WWF, it was over. It was over. So the Hulkamaniac I was when Hulk got hurt, or Hulk lost, it it gave me post traumatic. I still have PTSD from it. It was trauma inducing, right? So
Mm.
I cause I was 100% a Mark hook, line, and seeker as a kid, man. That stuff, when they were bleeding and all of that stuff, or they would be left. And there was an episode of Saturday Night Wrestling. It was Saturday Night Main Events, with them, and they would take over the programming for Saturday Night Live. So instead of Saturday Night Live, it would be that. And when I was too young to stay up, my parents would record it for me and I'd watch it the next day. Or once they let me stay up to watch it live, I would watch it live. But man, those were awesome. But Hulk Hogan was definitely my number one favorite first. And
Yeah,
yeah.
it was dope. It was dope. You just reminded me though with that Saturday night's main event. When we first to get in, first started getting WWF. It was in the later 80s, and one of my friends was lucky enough to have satellite TV at Sky TV, and we would all pile around his house and we'd watch. So all we would get was wrestling superstars and wrestling challenge. So it would be squash matches. That's all we'd see.
Mm.
So whoever the main guy would come out, and it'd be like a honky tonk man who'd come out with his guitar, and then there'd be like an unknown guy in there called
A
like
jobber.
John Budkiss or something, and he would just get his ass kicked for 2.5 minutes, and then someone else would come out. So we was watching it, and then once we realised the format, we was like, why won't he fight him? Why can't that one fight that one? Why do we have like him against the bum? And then one particular weekend, Saturday night's main event come on, but it was a Sunday, so it wasn't live. It was a repeat. We was watching it on a Sunday afternoon, and then we see like you'd see Hulk versus Earthquake, and you think, oh, hold on a minute. On this one, they really got the two superstars fighting. So that was our first. So we'd see all these squash matches forever, and you'd never see a superstar versus a superstar unless you was watching Mania or SummerSlam or Survivor Series or Rumble. So yeah, by the time we got round to that, we were sick of the seeing squash. That's all we got here. Was it the same for you? Because all we got was squash matches.
No, not always.
Mm.
Not always. There would be, when there was the Saturday cartoon, like they would sometimes show the big matches that happened if there was a title transfer
Mm.
before the PLE or pay-per-view or
Yeah.
closed circuit TV format existed, right? The only way that they could keep you up to date with storylines, and Vince was the first person to start and create storylines and do that type of presentation, right? So uh yeah, it was definitely, I noticed once I got older, but as a kid, I can't lie, man. I'd be like, oh, he's gonna, I hope this dude beats, so and
Mm.
so's ass or whatever. Like, especially you mentioned Honky Tonk Man, and as a Hulkamaniac, I hated the Honky Tonk Man with every fiber of my being. Like him just being on the TV screen would make me angry. Just seeing his face would make me angry as a kid because it just he was such a great heel. He was such a great heel.
Mm.
He really was, but he did his job, and I had already had a disdain for Elvis. So I was like, you're just an Elvis biter. But
Uh, See, he was
yeah,
one of my favorites. See,
yeah.
I like the Hills. I was explaining to you before. I like Ted
Hmm.
DiBiase when he knocked the basketball away from the kid when he got to 9. You know, like when he was
Hmm.
bouncing 10, he had to dribble the ball 10 times to get $1,000 or something. As he got the 9, he just beat it out of his hand. The little kid starts crying while Virgil was counting the money behind. Like, I used to love that shit. I'd be laughing my head off. Like everyone's mad, and I'll just be laughing. And the the honky tonk
As
man was he was great because he would always chicken shit out of the main fight somehow. He would never actually throw hands with anybody, but he would squash. He would do the squash matches every week and beat the shit out of some local. And as he's pinning him, 1, 2, pull his hair up off the mat. No, not yet. And beat him up some more, and then pole drive his ass. And yeah, like. But that was
yeah,
my shit. The hills, especially the chicken shit hills, the ones that would beg off. And then as soon as the baby face turned to the ref and said, like, what's going on, they would hit him from behind and stuff. But
so I would have to say that I started to really appreciate the heels the older I got, and I know I did always like Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper, there's two of them that made the two bad guys that I rooted for first. was Roddy and also Jake the Snake Roberts. Rowdy was just larger than life, and
Mm.
once he wasn't, feuding with Hogan and kind of started, but still was a heel, and and he had Piper's Pit. And I loved Piper's Pit because he was just crazy, and I thought he was funny, and I thought he was cool. Uh, so Roddy Piper was the first one, but when Jake the Snake came on the scene, like I thought that was the coolest thing ever, and
Yeah.
his promos that he cut and how methodical and dark he was, and like, and he'd throw the snake on people. I remember he had him bite Macho Man Randy
Mhm.
Savage on that, and I was like, oh, and it was a King Cobra, and man, I was like, he's gonna die. I mean, I was completely like, what's it gonna happen? It
Yeah.
was just
I was as
crazy.
well. Yeah, I was as well. Because that when he bit him as well, like the blood, like it was he was being bit by a snake. Like
Yes.
there was no like blood packs or anything. The snake was
No,
biting him.
he
Yeah,
really bit him,
yeah,
like, and it was a cobra. It's like, but
yeah.
but
Because there's a story. Do you know the story about Macho Man with that match? So it, it,
oh
it, it
yes,
he was paranoid of the other guys, and he always thought people were trying to take his spot. And when they said to him, "Right, we're going to get the snake to bite you," he thought he was being set up, and it was actually going to get poisoned. And he said to Jake, he was like, "Okay, brother, you get bit first." And he made the snake bite him in the locker room,
yeah,
so that
that
to
you
prove
can
that
tell.
that he never had any venom. Like,
Yeah, Jake the Snake told that story a couple times in different places, but one of the favorite ones is when he went on Joe Rogan, and it was really a funny thing because Jake really did a great impersonation of Macho Man,
yeah,
and how hype he was. It wasn't he wasn't calm about it because he thought it was a rib and it was being set up, and he was gonna get poison, like you said,
mhm.
and he had and Jake was like, all right. But man, that I mean, just that level of craziness, I'm you had mentioned, how you didn't like American wrestling was the only time that you would see blood and people being hit
Mm,
with the chairs, and not the traditional wrestling where, like, if someone had a choke hold, that was illegal, when
mm,
we would cross the line. And man, I grew up watching and seeing in the magazines all of the blood and the gore, and those guys really, being just, especially Ric Flair. It seemed like there wasn't a match that he would wrestle that he didn't end up bloodied somehow, some way, every single match, right? And a
yeah.
lot of the Ghost guys would. Uh, it was just larger than life. I had seen that, but the snake was over the top for me. So I definitely was team Jake the Snake all the way once he came on the scene.
Mm. What I liked about him as well, he when he cut a promo or to sell a match, he would whisper. Like
Mm-hmm.
up until then, everyone was like, "I'm gonna kick your ass in Madison Square Garden. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna." And
Let me tell you something, brother. Yeah.
where he would go, "Well, let me tell you." He would whisper into the mic, and he said he'd done it for effect because when he started whispering, everyone would lean in,
Hmm.
and he said, and then they'd really listen. He says, and then when he did hit him with a big voice, it was like, like he would make you sit back. Yeah, but like,
Exactly. So he would use
mm,
it for emphasis and get his point
mm,
across, and definitely he would talk, and then he would lower, and he studied psychology. Jake the Snake is an extremely intelligent individual, and salute to him because he suffered a very long time. And one of the episodes that we're going to get into is going over Beyond the Mat,
Mm,
the DVD that came out in the mid 2000s about there's Terry Funk, Jake the Snake, Mankind, of course, Nick Foley, Rock. There's a whole lot of behind the scenes,
mm,
but you see Jake the Snake struggle with his addiction and
yeah.
not at his best. So, uh, yeah, we
The
got a
makers
lot of good stuff.
the makers of that documentary were actually accused of abusing Jake and leading him
Hmm.
on and giving him stuff to make him behave how he did on camera, and uh, you know,
They filmed him smoking crack
they filmed him smoking crack. Yeah,
and copping crack for him, right? I
yeah,
mean, so
yeah,
Pam Badass said Junkyard Dog was one of his favorites. I mean, Junkyard
yeah,
Dog was amazing. Do you remember George the Animal Steel?
yeah, yeah.
Man, with the green tongue, like he'd come out with some green now and laters or however he did it,
I, I,
food coloring.
I was watching I was watching the McMahon documentary, and there's a part in it where Vince is on a talk show, but he's singing and he's got all the girls dancing around him, and he's I can't remember what song he's singing. It's like a Sinatra song.
Don't give away. They have to wait
No,
for that.
there's a band playing in the background, and all the wrestlers are there pretending to play instruments. Like so, Hulk's on an electric guitar. Um, Brutus has got like a trumpet, and someone else has got a
I
saxophone,
remember that
and
episode.
George Animal's still standing there with a triangle and missing it. He's missing the triangle, and that does that. That that's the reason I brought that up, because I see the
He
clip of that
was
today. It
he
just
was
tickled me.
he was eating the turnbuckle. I mean, he would bite into the turnbuckle and rip it apart and like
Mm,
eat the stuffing and spit it out at people.
mm,
I mean, so that was the thing that was beautiful about WWE or WWF at that time. Uh, it was so much larger than life, and it
mm,
was vivid, right? And once Vince put out his product, it forced all the other territories that decided to stay and keep that he wasn't able to squash out. It upped their production, which was the reason why you got programming like Starcade, right?
mm,
So because they were the second to it. And we'll get into a
mm,
lot of the details because the very first episode that we're going to be reviewing, which for our live viewers here today, we're going to be going into episode 1 of Mr. McMahon here soon. So don't tune away. For you folks that are watching this on the replay, uh, you're going to have to tune in to episode 2 for that. This is our origin story and why
mm,
we like
mm.
wrestling and why we decided to start this podcast. And let's talk about that. So, to set the record straight and lay the foundation, you know, the how this podcast
Mm.
came about.
So should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Me and you were getting ready for a session. We'd already done about 60 or 70 of them together. We was getting ready for a sesh, and you mentioned that you might be going to watch a Monday Night Raw, and I said to you, "Oh, you like wrestling?" And you said, "Yeah." I started talking, and you started talking, and we both went, "Oh, yeah," and we realised we were two kindred spirits with the same
Hmm.
conversation and same excitement about it. And the other guys on the session like looking like sitting back as like nerds, like we didn't get the
Hmm. Well,
reaction.
they were just like, nah.
Yeah, like nah. And
And
Mikey
before
unlikely
I would
joined the
geek out on
conversation.
I would geek
Mm,
out on wrestling before you were a part of the sesh.
yeah,
and it would be crickets.
Yeah.
So yeah, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we started that, and then a couple of times we spoke about it on the session, like you said, crickets. It was just me and you just talking, and all the other guys looking at their phones or going to get something to eat. So, and then yeah, and the only other person I think that was into it was Mikey,
Yeah,
Mikey Unlikely.
exactly.
Yeah, because Mikey, I was watching one of Mikey's shows, and he finished his stream and he raided into one of the 24/7 wrestling streams on Twitch. He raided us into it, and I went, "Oh, I didn't know you like wrestling." And he went, "Yeah, I like wrestling." I went into this big diatribe why he likes wrestling and what me and you have just done for the past 30 minutes. He went into that with me. So I'm thinking, yeah, man. But then me and you started talking to ourselves, like, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this. And then here we are. Here we are.
Here we are, and here it
One of us
is.
said to the other one, let's just do it. And then here we are.
Yeah, man.
Mm. I've
Says
been
let's
excited about this all week. I really have.
well, we were brainstorming because we had already came to the conclusion that we were going to uh do some type of venture,
Mm.
and if I remember correctly, we just bouncing ideas back and forth and
Yeah.
came to it was like, all right, this is what it is, because this is like this is what it is.
Mm. Well, this is
So
our thing for me and you. So this is what it is.
yeah,
Mm.
I mean, what better subject to talk about it? And what's really cool about it is that this is going to be something that I'm going to be able to incorporate and involve my kids. So y'all
Mm.
are going to be able to see Baby Boogie and Little Boogie talk about times and things and
That's dope.
what they like when we get into some current storylines and all of that. So
Mm.
uh and I got to give a big shout out because you know I spoke to Mars about this last night and was like, man, fam, you got to bless me with something. And I was like, listen, I know this is short notice, so give me something that you got that sounds like this, anything you got in your library. He hit me off with several of them. They were all fire, but the one,
Herbs, you mean? Yeah, you mean
yeah,
herbs.
herbs.
Mm.
Did I say? Did
Yeah,
I
it's
say
another
something?
name. Yeah, that's all right. It's herbs one. That's what we're talking about. It's great.
Yeah, herbs. Yeah,
Mm.
I don't know who else I said, but
Mm.
either way, herbs won.
Mm.
Shout out to herbs, and was like, yo, man, you gotta bless us with this beat, and he hit us off with that, but he already had mentioned that he is working on uh, the beat for us for the
Mm.
official.
I like the
Yeah.
one. I like the one he broke us off though. I'm into that. He set himself a higher bar for the permanent one. If that's only a temporary,
Mm,
because that's dope.
yeah.
That's a dope
Yeah,
one.
it is a dope one, right?
Mm.
Oh, I said
Mm.
Mars. Yeah, because
Yeah.
Mars comes up with all the ideas.
Mm.
Uh so Pan feels like you're watching on the Mat 2024. Yeah. Well, you know what I'm saying? It's all good. Uh we absolutely love wrestling and we're looking for like-minded viewers. So we have already a possible first guest lined up, and we're going to be bringing you all types of content in regards to reviewing not just current storylines and just talking about that, because there's plenty of those out there, and that is not just what we're going to do. We're going to go back and start reviewing some of our favorite uh, specials and DVDs and documentaries and programming. Like right now, we're first episode and first couple of episodes. We're going to take you one by one through all 6 episodes of Mr. McMahon, and our take on it and how it's important and it relates to us, and being able to have that back and forth and Danny has altering opinions than I do. So there's going to be a yin and a yang, and
Mm.
definitely a different perspective between the two, right? The two, because I'm a crass American and he's a proper English gentleman, right?
Oi.
Boy,
Nice. Yeah, no, we got opposing views definitely because we've already had conversations, and yeah, the things that used to make you cry used to make me laugh. So yeah, like
yeah, man.
mm, like when Hogan got, you were telling me about when Hogan got hurt and you was distraught. I was
Oh
like,
my
good.
god, yeah, dude. Like when Hogan got hurt, and that was on a Saturday night. Uh, they sent him to it. Like they showed him getting in an ambulance and being carted away. I think it was earthquake or the tsunami or whatever, hurricane,
Yeah,
one of those guys. uh i I think they hit him with the
typhoon.
belly.
Mm.
Typhoon, that's what it
I think it
was.
was
Yeah,
earthquake because he kept jumping and landing on him while the other one was holding him,
yeah, like they, and yeah,
and you thought his rib cage had caved.
correct, or his back
Yeah,
was all jacked up or
yeah.
all of that stuff, man. And they took him away, and I was just like, my parents had to, I think they gave me drugs, or they gave me some type of something. This is in the early 80s. Don't judge them. Uh, they had to give me something to calm me the fuck down, because they like because I was like, Hogan's gonna die. You know what I mean? It was like it was horrible, man. I had trauma, and what was funny is that I had a similar moment with my son, because he started watching wrestling, and he was the one that brought me back into wrestling. And while I'm watching it currently again, because he's a John Cena head, from that's his Hulk Hogan. And John Cena was the baby face of all baby faces for a very long time, and especially while he, at the time that he was growing up and watching it. And Cena got hurt, and all that, because he was downstairs watching it, on the TV downstairs by himself. And Mama Boogie called me and was like, "You're gonna have to talk to your son." I was like, "Why? What's wrong?" She's like, "Man, John Cena got hurt and he ain't listening to me." I was like, "All right, I got you." I was like, "I got you, fam." And I had to explain to him, like, "Man, I know what you're feeling." Because, and I just explained to him the whole experience that I had with Hogan. And I remember when Hulk Hogan, I just took him through the whole experience, and he was like, "For real?" And then, he was like, "And that's what happened to John Cena." And then I was like, "Yeah, man." I said, "He's gonna come back. He's tough enough. He's gonna fight through it. He's gonna make a return. Don't you worry." And then, a couple weeks later or days later, "He's back, Dad. He's all taped up and he's back." I was like, "I told you, he's tough. He's got this." Yeah. So
Here, he's back. He's finished making that movie.
do 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 do. You
Yeah,
just couldn't see him. He was there the whole time. You just couldn't see him.
yeah,
He's like the Holy Ghost.
yeah, man.
So, man,
But
I think
my kids, not interested. Not interested one bit. I think it's because I watched
never,
some. Nah,
never, not.
nah. I don't know. Maybe I used to watch it a lot, and it was like, oh, he's watching this again. Like
So you were watching it while they were young.
yeah, I was watching it while they were young. Yeah, so I've always been a fan. I've always been a fan. Even when it wasn't cool, I was still a secret fan. I was still watching it, and like like for a time before the Attitude Era, there was a time where you was lame if you watched it. And I just didn't tell no one. I was still watching it, and so I was always a fan. I've read books. I've got a DVD collection. Yeah. So I've never not been a fan, and I like the intricacies of it, and I like I've watched so much of it now that I can probably watch a match and go, "Oh, they're going to go this way with it," like in my head, like
Mhm.
and sort of things. But I like it when they still but they can still throw me for a loop, and it's great. Like they can still hit you with a surprise, and they can still because it's soap opera. It's a soap opera for boys and men. It's well, and girls as well, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
It's
and
it's storytelling at its greatest, and it's live performance storytelling.
absolutely. I have always, and I stole this from one of my good friends, and it made me laugh because I started working with him, and I had found out that he is 100% like full blown into wrestling and still is. Uh, and he referred to him as his stories, like as
Mm,
like, and he was like, "Yeah, they're my soap operas, they're my stories." And he was just, he was saying it in jest and mocking, but he was keeping it real, like, hell yeah, you know what I
mm,
mean? And I was like, that is absolutely true, and I had never thought about it as with it that perspective until then. And he was one of the folks that got me into watching it again, because that
mm,
was right around the time that the Attitude Era had kicked off. And where I was working at, I started working in the call center for a cable company, and then uh worked my way up to Calvin and was in management. But so I had to work those things,
mm.
and those were the worst. The absolutely, they would pay, it was overtime. I would take the overtime. It was good money, and they would feed you. So at that time I was living on my own and stuff like that, and bachelor it up, and I knew that I would come home with at least like 3 or 4 pizzas for the fridge, that I'd have groceries for the whole week, right? I was like, I got 3 or 4 pizzas in the fridge. I'm good. I'm gonna eat on these all week.
Mm, mm.
But I would work at those events, but the people would try to call, and there would be nothing but scammers, right? And you'd have to deal with that. It was just some really vile people that you had to deal with. Uh
Yeah.
Dealing with that. So I hate it, but I would watch them. And when the first time that I saw Godfather is the reason
Yeah.
why I came back and started watching the Attitude Era, because of the whole pimps and hoes thing.
Mm. Just climb aboard the whole train, yeah, and it would come.
I I didn't believe it. I did not
Mm,
believe in a million years that uh that was true. And when I saw it with my own eyes, I was like, okay, this is no longer the WWE that I was watching, because I was fixated on ECW at that point.
yeah, me too.
So I was like, no more. Once ECW started coming on, and it was actually on during the time that I was watching TV, because it was when I was coming home from DJing from the club in the middle of the night. It was on the middle of the night on a UHF channel that was all fuzzy and grainy, because it was coming out of Dayton and I was in Cincinnati, and I was had to adjust my rabbit ears just a certain way. And also the commercials in between, that they were nothing but 976 or like 900 numbers for, like,
Yeah,
sex lines, because they were all girls in like the dental floss bikinis. That was the first time I had ever seen. Well, no, because I saw it was like they were actually wearing like Two Live Crew dental floss thongs and stuff on the commercials.
yeah, but that's what ECW was on for us. It was on a station called Bravo, and Bravo used to have taglines. So it was Bravo was an obscure channel, and it was Bachelor Man TV. So it would have like taglines. It would say Bravo, sleeping on the couch since 1991. It would be like Bravo, drinking beer with your mates in the pub since 1990. It'd have all these different things. And me and Stu Dog used to have one for me, and it was Danny Chaz mugging you off since 75. What we stole from that thing. Like it was a thing me and Stu would say to people when we were gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the same advert. So it must have just been a duplicate of that channel, but with English telephone numbers, because we would have the same adverts. It would be feeling lonely. Why don't you call Sarah? She's waiting for your call. And that would be the thing. But ECW was great because, like what you said with the Godfather, when I was doing call and responses, it's all climb aboard, all the crowd, the whole train. They would, and in ECW, it was what does everybody want? And it was Al Snow with head. And there was a lot of, I believe that was the era I was talking about before the Attitude Era, where I was like, it wasn't cool. And I think WCW and ECW sort of made WWF at the time, WWE, go that route of gritty because they sort of realized that the characters they created were becoming old hat. Like it would be like the trash man versus the tax man, the dentist versus it. That was what WWE were doing at the time. And then with ECW and WCW rising, and WCW outselling them for 80 something weeks every Monday, the Attitude Era sort of kicks off them, like you said, with the Ho Train and Steve Austin, anti-establishment, Vince McMahon that had done the Montreal screw job, so he was now the evil boss. And it become, like you said, stories, and the more pushing the limits of PG-13 to the past the limit, really, with like the storylines of Edge and Lita as well, with which was a story that was happening for real, where Edge was having an affair with Lita while she was with Matt Hardy, was actually going on in real life, and they made it a storyline because that was like almost near the truth. If it's almost the truth, it's this is real, like on the TV. So
Mm-hmm.
I think when you got back into it was when it really took off. It took off for them. I'm going to say it's a complete guess from 97 to 2002 or something like that, 2003.
2003, maybe up until, I know that it was probably I followed it probably again to maybe up to 04, 05.
Mm.
You know what I mean? But yeah, once Mama Boogie came into the picture, yeah, there was no more wrestling. I think.
Yeah. Now I was still watching it. I was still watching
Yeah,
it because like everybody knows I don't sleep. So
yeah.
that's when I'll be watching TV.
Sleep
So
is the cousin of death.
everyone would be asleep in the house, and I'm watching ECW at 2 a.m.
Yeah,
Like that would be me. Like that's before I got into Twitch, and then I'll just be sitting watching Twitch all night. Like when I
you
got into that, yeah.
you mentioned the whole relationship, and when you couldn't really tell because they started blurring the lines more and more between reality and uh what was a work,
Mm,
as they call it, right? And that is what captivated me as a kid. That's what captivated me or recaptivated me uh when it brought me back in during the Attitude Era. And then that was what captivated me yet again when I started watching it again with my kids. And because I took a moment and stopped and was like, all right, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna watch this and I know it's going to take me at least a month before I'm going to understand the story angle and understand why I should give a shit about these characters. And I gave it a good month, and I would say probably by week 2 I understood all the angles and understood the characters' whys and what the stage was. And I realized that we're on a whole nother level, and they have continued to just increase the quality and of production, and also the storylines and what they're doing. I would say that with Triple H being in control of creative for WWE, uh, it's been nothing but a bonus, and they have absolutely thrived with everything with the TKO merger with UFC and WWE merging together and forming TKO, that parent company, and all of the other brands that are underneath that now. That is just these wrestlers have finally been able to be set up in a way where I think they're treated probably better than they've ever been treated before, uh, which has given them the ability to really invest and sell out even more now than they have before and get into the characters and blur lines. and
Mhm.
and that's kind of how we got to blurred reality wrestling, and that's what I
Yeah.
love about it, and that's what you love about it,
Yes, sir.
is that because and they did that in the early on with the whole how WWE came into or WWF came into existence and took over, which we're going to get into in the episode 2. But I think we've done pretty good on giving everyone our origin story and our why. So
Mm.
for the folks that are live right now, don't tune away.
Don't turn away.
We're not doing anything at all. But for you folks that are watching us on the replay, this is where we will say thank you so much. Please like, follow, and
Mhm.
subscribe. You guys that are live, please like, follow, and subscribe Mr. Danny Chaz's channel, my channel, and then, of course, most importantly, Blurred Reality Wrestling on
Mhm.
twitch.tv and Blurred Reality Wrestling on youtube.com. Please.
Mm.
Danny, any tatas?
I, it's just I want to reinforce what you just said. Follow us, me and Boogie, on both of our channels. And for the Blurred Reality, I've been raiding constantly into the channel. Anyone who's been joining my channel, I've been raided in.
Yep.
I've raided
Me
in
too.
3 or 4 times. And I'd
Yep.
just like to add that Pan, so me and you have given our origin story. Pan, there's a message still up on my screen from earlier when Pan was in my channel. And it says, my first memory of wrestling was Jeff Jarrett beating Sting in Auckland, New Zealand in 1984. Same year, Ric Flair won the title from Harley Racing, Wellington, New Zealand.
Wow.
So that's Pan's earliest memory as well. Of so I just thought, while we're on origin stories, we'll bring in someone else. So if anyone else is interested in the thing, let us know your story as well.
That's dope.
Mm.
All right. So, welcome into episode number 2 of Blurred Reality Wrestling. I am the one and only Buzzing Cousin Ghost Boogie, and this is to that side over there, my co-host, Mr.
It's
Danny
Danny
Chad.
Chat. Oi, how we doing?
Boy, hello, Governor.
What's up, my
Well,
buzzing cousin?
hey man, just buzzing, cousin. Uh what we doing is getting into Mr. McMahon episode number 1,
Mm.
man. So I've been looking forward to this one, since they announced it. I before the scandal, when they announced that they were filming this documentary and it was in production, and they were mentioning it on the show and talking about it to the press, and it was all of that, you know, I couldn't wait for it. And then the controversy hit right as they were trying to wrap production slash even continue production. That happened in the middle of production. The controversy hit, and I was like, "Oh Lord, that's over."
Mm.
And then they announced that no, we're not done. And they putting it out, and they did put it out. And oh man, I
Mm.
couldn't wait. I don't know about you. How'd you feel when they announced that this came out, that this was coming out?
Well, to tell you the truth, the only way I knew this was coming out is because you told me. I,
Mhm.
I, mm, I like I was saying, we got different news over here, and it isn't as big news as it is out there. But you said to me, "Oh, have you seen the McMahon doc?" And I was like, "What? What McMahon?" And then I was all in. I was like, "Ah, yeah." Man, I looked it up. Yeah, it's coming on the same day here and everything. But I had to physically look it up and see it. But I like the fact that when the episode 1 starts, it says it's filmed in 2021, so it's pandemic time.
Mhm.
So and it and there's also another message that says part of this was filmed before any allegations. So I'm guessing as it goes on, we're going to see a turn in the storyline of it. But right now we're on episode 1 and the beginnings and how it all started. But
Yeah, I
I
mean,
I like the way. Sorry, I like the way the first thing Vince McMahon says. He walks out, gives his strut, climbs into the ring, sits in the chair, pulls his suit down, and he says, um, I don't like talking about myself. I could talk about anyone else you want, but this is really odd to me talking about myself. And I was shocked because I
yes,
believe him. I believe he doesn't like talking about himself, like
you
his
know,
real self.
and that's down, in my notes as well. But what I like about how they introduce everyone, they show
Mm,
they start and they show all of the characters sitting
yeah.
down, getting mic'd up, and you see them all like getting their drinks, like taking a sip, getting their stuff together, and you can see them like putting on their game face, right? And they start getting into where one of the guys, I think it was Hogan, I'm almost positive,
Hmm.
s- and it might even been Triple H, and they were all echoing the same thing. And it's, you're going to only see what
Mm.
Vince wants you to see. And everyone says that exact same line when it comes to sitting down and answering you're only going to see what Vince wants you to see. And
Even his son
then
and daughter said the same thing.
son and daughter said the same thing.
Mm.
And transition into with the statement that Vince says, where, I don't want I don't want to really you don't want to really know me. I don't want you to really know me. And
Mm.
also he's like, "Psh, some of the stories, yeah."
Yeah, he's sort of itching to relieve himself of the burden of what he's about to be accused of.
But he's like, I
And
can't tell you the real
I,
stories.
and he was going, well, tell us one of the stories. He went, no, I don't want to. It weren't like it didn't even. It was like, I don't want to tell you the real stories. Like he actually says that sentence. I don't want to tell you the real stories. He said, I'll make it semi interesting.
And then the transition in, at that point, they go right into Hulk. And
Yeah.
Hulk, it goes and tries to explain, and he alludes to kayfabe. And for the folks that don't
Yeah.
understand what kayfabe is that is what the wrestlers refer to or call in the business, like what is backstage and what the angle is. Like,
Mm.
so if like Danny and I hate each other and we want to play into that whole background, we would in the chat on we wouldn't travel, we wouldn't be seen together in the same anything. And whenever you saw us, we were, let me tell you something, brother.
Mm.
Danny Chaz, I don't like your beans or your toast. I
Hey, what the
mean,
fuck? Yeah.
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 So that was the big thing. And then Hawk's like, you're just not going to understand if you're not a
You're not living
wrestler
it.
or you're not one of us, you will never understand truly wrestling. And it's like, there's no way to.
No. No, but that whole thing, like if me and you was involved in a storyline on the TV and we hated each other and we're discussing, right, what we're going to do next is this and that. Somebody come over who's not part of the business, they would actually say, "Kayfabe," and that means stop talking about what we're talking about right now. There's someone on us, and that always intrigued me because growing up where I grew up, we had words like that. What we would say if there was someone that we didn't want to talk in front of and things like that. So when I heard that they had that as well, it was like, there was something else we could relate to coming from the area that I come from. And we used the wrong words and the rhyming slang and just to fuck with other people. And
Oklahoma.
yeah, that's it. It just got you going where you was going. But like you said, when Hogan says if you weren't part of the business, you wouldn't know. The other thing that Hogan got me with his opening statement was like he's known Vince since the early 80s and worked with him all them years in close quarters. And it's now 2024. I'm not going to do the maths, but like it's 40 years, let's say.
Mhm.
And he says on one of the first, one of his first, I've never met the real Vince McMahon. Like he went, I don't know him. I don't know who Vince McMahon is. And that's going
Yeah.
back to what we were saying before, where even his son and daughter said you will only see what he wants you to see. And
Yeah.
Hunter refers to him as the PT Barnum of wrestling.
Absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely. And that being when he made that statement, I couldn't argue that because he
no.
is, I mean, wrestling. I know my grandparents and my great grandparents on both sides would go and see wrestling and would be at the matches, and those were a thing. And one of my great grandmothers was one of those crazy old ladies that would, you know, sit ringside and beat the piss out of the wrestlers with her purse. Like she would be cussing and spitting and hollering and hooting and wanting to fight, and would just be completely marked out. And that, so yeah, I got it early on. And things about that, again, blurred reality wrestling. Tony Atlas next says, you know, fantasy into reality. So that is how you take and what Vince wanted to do was turn fantasy into
Mm,
reality, right? And make these larger than life characters and play on people's hot buttons,
mm,
like Oklahoma. They would get stuff to get people riled up.
mm.
right? And people would bite it, and especially the young people, targeting young people.
Mm.
Hmm. It,
It's,
it, it was great.
they would take what was ever in the news and create a character around it. So, well, not create a character around it, but use a character that they could assimilate to what was going on in the news. So, like when they used the Iron Sheik, there was a lot of stuff going on with Iran and America, and so they would use him and Sergeant Slaughter as well. He defected for a while, didn't he, over to Iran, and he was running around
Mhm.
with a flag and everything else, which really pissed people off. He was
That
getting
was a
death threats
huge,
because he
huge.
was a traitor in America.
He was GI Joe, bro. Like,
Yeah.
that was he was Sergeant Slaughter. I mean, that was and during that time as a kid, you mentioned the Iron Sheik, who Hogan, I was a Hulkamaniac. That was how they got the belt off of the when Vince took over.
Yeah.
And I know we're kind of bouncing around at this point, but uh the Iron Sheik, that was a huge event, and that
Mm,
was a big draw when Hogan was able, and that's why he started having his theme song, I Am a Real American,
mhm,
fight for the rights of every man, like that shit, that when
mm,
he was one of the first wrestlers that had like his own real customized intro music like that, and it
yeah.
was huge. It just was. He was larger than life with America, and his battles with Nicola, and Iron Sheik, and then you had the whole Sergeant Slaughter becoming a part of wrestling and over on WWF, and him being on GI Joe, and all of a sudden he being a bad guy.
Mhm.
Come on, man.
That was a
That
good
was
turn.
huge.
Mm. Yeah, he was getting death threats to his house, like not to
Yes.
like to his actual where he lives. Like, I know where you live, you're gonna get it and stuff like things like that. But you mentioned Nikolai. Was it Nikolai Volkov?
Yes, Nikolai Volkov.
And I used to love it. I used to absolutely love it when he'd come out and sing the national
Ah,
anthem. And
man.
I would be watching this from an English perspective, just laughing to myself. And then I would see all these Americans fucking angry, so many angry mullets, just like fuck you, man, like going crazy. And I used to think, oh, these American boys are pissed. Like, I mean, when I was watching it from the outside looking in, I could think he's only singing his national anthem. What are they upset about? But like back then, you had the whole Russia America thing, wasn't it? It was like a big deal, like with Reagan, Gorbachev, and like it
It
was
was the Cold
polarizing.
War.
Exactly. You was just
We
like
were still doing
you was
nuclear.
in schools being taught to get under your desks and hold your head if you had the 4 minute warning, and
Absolutely.
you was scared that the bomb was going to drop at any time.
We
We
had
all
a
were.
spot.
I'm saying you were. We all were. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
because we
but
were like, because from the outside looking in, we was like, these two fuckers, if they go off, man, it's just going to do all of us. Like that's how we see it. Mm,
man, I mean, that was huge because I mean, doing the drills, our school
mm,
was this all the schools that I went to were like really, really old, like castle like structures that were fallout shelters
mm,
for those areas. You were supposed to report and get to those buildings. So we had drills
mm.
going to it, and it was crazy. And I that was a big thing,
It was a
especially
massive
I
thing.
mean,
Yeah.
we were indoctrinated, and
Mm,
because Russia, communism, bad, 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 and that whole, as a kid growing up during that, and that was just it played on a very,
Mm.
very sensitive subject. I mean, just like the movie Red Dawn, that
Red
was a
Dawn.
huge thing for because that was close.
Mm.
And I could relate to the area where it was. And I just I was like, wow, that was a crazy thing for me too. But the playing on those subjects and how well Vince
Yeah.
did that, he was a master at
Mm.
doing that.
Him
And
and Pat. Yeah.
absolutely,
Mm. Yeah.
absolutely. You know, to get back on track, the one thing, they mentioned, they cut to Bret Hart and
Yeah.
you know, we're never going to be critical of anyone because we appreciate everyone that was a part of our childhood and a part of my child's childhood and life. So to be a professional wrestler, you do have to have a lot of sacrifice and you have to have a lot of self confidence and drive. And it's going to take a certain type of individual to be a successful professional wrestler. And every single one of us, you know, including me and everyone in the chat, every single one of us has some type of character flaws, right? So I'm not going to be critical of anyone, but when I saw Bret Hart first on his screen, uh, you know, I was a true artist, and he's very proud,
Mm.
and he seems like he is still very much. I don't want to say bitter, but unhappy with a lot of how things are still to this day, and discontent.
Mm. Well, what we've got to realize is he grew up in a family where that was their everything. Wrestling is their everything. His father, his cousins, his brother, it, all they know from Stu, his father, was from the minute they could walk, they were wrestling, and they were in the basement of their house. They used to call it a dungeon, and training wrestlers, and people would stay and live
Absolutely.
with them. So for the biggest goal in your life to get to where he got and be what he was, and then to feel like he did because he felt like he was cheated in some way, and because that's such in his blood and everything, I can see from the outside looking in, it's like, oh well, move on. But if you're living that every day, your life, and every day of your life, you're indoctrinate. Your whole belief system is to get where he got from. You know nothing else. That is all you know is to drive yourself there. And then when you get there, you feel like you've been cheated because that whole Montreal thing. I'll look at that from a business point of view. And the person you work for has just said, right, you're leaving to go to another company for more money. You need to give the belt up.
Mhm.
And he said no. So
Mhm.
who's really wrong in that? From the outside looking in. I mean, we all love Brett and everything
Well,
else.
Brett had a point though. Brett had, and he was the only wrestler to ever have, except um, Hogan when he went to WCW, to have creative control in his contract,
Mm,
and that was negotiated. So when Brett had whether if it was in the contract or if it was a verbal agreement between Vince and him, which I don't remember to be 100% factual because I know that was on
mm,
something we're going to cover beyond the mat. Is
yeah.
going to be something we're going to cover, and that is specifically covered that whole event. Uh, that I can't remember, but that was his thing. It to give you a little bit of color on
Mm,
why he also has that vitriol about like
mm.
Vince and ended up
But
punching him behind scenes.
well, he spat in his face. That I would rather be punched.
Yes.
So I'd rather someone come at me and give me a punch than that.
Yeah, I'm stabbing or
Yeah,
shooting
yeah.
somebody. You
You're in
spit
a
on me.
you're in a terrible state if you spit on me. You're not going to be the same after that. But like, but the traditional thing, Brett coming from a traditional family with the such wrestling values it is, it's a known thing. If you're going to leave the territory, you give up the belt.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
he
I
refused to do that. So that's where the I sort of can see where Vince and Pat and everyone else involved. And according to this documentary, Sean was involved, and so was Hunter. Like they was all on a
yes.
call together and talking about how they're going to do it. So
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
um,
And remember when belts back then, it was a huge thing for
huge.
to allow that to happen because they really only had that one belt and it would take a very long time to actually have a new belt made
Mm,
to replace it. And it was a substantial amount of money, which, depending upon how big the territory was and how much budget they had, it could absolutely impact um their ability to earn,
yeah.
and everything, their profits. It was huge.
And the other thing as well that came up on the while we're on that, I mean, we could have done a whole episode on that Montreal thing. We're
Hmm.
there now. Um, Vince negotiated with Brett a 20-year contract.
Hmm.
Yeah. For the sole purpose of, I know you're going to ECW, let's make them pay to get you out of this contract.
Hmm.
So there was already had a deal going between them that this was going to go on and this is going to make you more money. They'll do the right thing on the way out. Like
Yeah.
so, it sounds like I'm sympathizing with Vince, but I'm just looking at it from a business point of
From a
view.
business standpoint, Vince absolutely was in the right, and that
Yeah,
Brett was absolutely in the wrong. He
yeah.
just didn't want to drop it to who he didn't want to drop it
He
to,
said I'll drop it to
and
somebody else, but not him. He did that.
and also he
Mm,
didn't want to do it in his hometown too. So
yeah.
there was a lot of things that were, but regardless, to get back on track,
Mm,
the next thing that happens is, talking about how Vince had a strategy and how he integrated the business with everything and anything that he could in regards to entertainment. And, Bob Costas is someone that was very early on, was a member and integrated with the presentation of WWF. He would actually be and take it as a very serious and approach it like announcing it from a very serious aspect, and it would sell it like this, like, man, like this has got to be real, especially to a kid. So I'm like, this is the same dude that I'm listening to do the Olympics or announce these fights, the Sugar Ray Leonard fights, and all of these things that are real too. So for me, it's like this is just that much more immersion in
mm,
the way that Vince was very much a strategist uh,
mm,
in the culture of American culture,
mm,
and professional wrestling merge with everything American culture and reality.
mm. Yes, he done that, and then also merged with MTV. Like, not merged with them, had deals with MTV to use like Cyndi Lauper and advertise on that, and get the younger crowd, and get the, because if you think about it, he structured the WWF at the time like MTV, because MTV was bang this, bang that. There's another thing. There's another thing. There's more colors. It was shot like bit, 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 bit,
MTV is everything and was
yeah,
everything.
exactly. And before that, a wrestling match was two guys coming out, some people clapping, and an arm lock, and you won with a suplex. And then when Vince took it over, it became like more what we're saying, more of a MTV, more of a faster, louder product with flashing lights.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Freakbait was on the session with us,
Mm-hmm.
and he was explaining, I was asking him like stuff about getting followers and getting people to take notice, and he was saying primary colors, and it's like when you're a baby shaking keys. Look over here, look over here, and that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what MTV was. It was bang, bang, bang. Look at this, look at that, and look at this. And the Cyndi Lauper thing was such a big draw for the WrestleMania build up to the first ever WrestleMania.
Captain Lou Albano with that
Yeah.
video, girls just want to have fun. MTV integration was humongous for myself because MTV was special, and it was one thing for waiting for it to come to your cable provider because they would run commercials during local TV. It was like, MTV, call your cable company to get them to add it, right? Which was a crazy bullying tactic and like brilliant. Uh, but you had this build up until the cable provider, and then you had to go to whoever's house that had cable, because not everybody in my neighborhood had cable, right? Or if they did, you know what I mean, like dad was able to hook that shit up on that
Mm.
bootleg type shit, uh but it was that, and it was that event, and it was something special, and then wrestling was with it too, and it was just
Mm.
Billy. I mean, you mentioned Cyndi Lauper, but later on, I mean, Billy Ocean was integrated with Get Out of My Dreams and Get Into My Car. And they had even all of those integrations. It was such a big thing. And Vince understood that. He was a mastermind and a visionary, and that gave him the ability to break the mold and say, I'm going to do it different. And that's why he was able to take
Mm.
advantage of it. Uh, you know, they touch on his early bringing up, and you know,
Yeah.
I I he wasn't with his dad, who was Vince Senior, right
I
off the
didn't know
bat.
this. This was news to me.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that he didn't know him until he was 12.
Yeah.
And his stepfather wasn't the nicest of guys.
Yeah, he was abused. He grew up in a trailer
Mm.
park for the first 12 years of his life,
Yeah.
and and he was physically abused, mentally abused,
Mm.
and was very, very had a very impoverished and a very difficult early upbringing, which, not to make any excuse for anything that he may or may have allegedly done
Mm.
uh at this time as we're filming and recording live, uh that
Yeah.
you
It's a
know
repetitive thing that people that happens to often carry on the torch when they get older.
it's generational trauma that's passed
Yeah.
down.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I think that I've
And
I've
that's
had
not
a
making
lot.
excuses for anyone. It's just a
uh,
fact that does happen with in some cases.
yeah, and that
Mm.
resonates personally with me, but and I think I've done a lot of thinking about, where things could have happened from. And if you think about how much things are different nowadays, where there's like actual mindfulness and people think
mm,
about mental health and take into account a lot, but that comes with access to education and things are thought about differently now than they
mm,
were. I mean, when at this time, you know, corporal punishment was expected in school. I mean, kids would get their ass beat by like, think about it. If you made a mistake in the
mm,
neighborhood, not only are you going to definitely get your ass beat at home, but you're going to get your ass beat by other adults that saw you did it, and your parents are going to be like, damn right they beat your ass, and I'm going to beat your ass too. I mean,
mm,
that was the thought. And if you got your ass beat at school, was that
mm.
the same way over there?
Yeah. So I grew up in what you would call a hard neighborhood, like
Yeah.
where and we wasn't we wasn't rich, but we wasn't poor, but it, we weren't the richest, and a lot of us got by on our wits. And we I was brought up with two brothers in a high crime area
Hmm.
where my mother brought me up strict
Hmm.
to keep us from the crime,
Hmm.
from taking that road, because I could have quite easily done that, and I never. And I was taught from a young age, sports, keep busy, and I've got to be harder than the other kids.
Hmm.
And the way that was taught to me was, this is you have to be harder than the other kids. If someone hit me in the street and I run home crying, I would get sent back out to
Hmm.
go and put it right, and that was how we was taught then. And then people go, "Oh, that was a different time," and it was a different time. And but I, I I've turned out a very nice person. I like to. I'm gonna brag for a bit. I've turned in, and I think, and I've got my mother and father to thank for that. And they brought me up strict. I went to a boys' Catholic school. Um, they done their best for me. My father had success in business as he got older, and I could see that flourish, and it's given me the work ethic that I've got today. So I don't know where we got on this, but this is where this
No,
yeah, this is
look,
this is
this is Vince's. This is just
mm.
because,
Oh yeah, we just talked to the Vince thing, yeah.
think about his. I don't know right now exactly what his age is. Do you know what his age is?
He's getting up there now. He must
I
be
mean,
late
yeah,
late 70s, touching 80, mustn't he?
yeah. So I mean, you got to think about, the
Yeah.
generation that came before us. They went through all of the wars,
Yeah, the
Vietnam,
wars. Yeah.
the Korean War,
Even the
whose
Second
flag
World War
proudly
almost.
sits
Yeah.
behind me. This is my grandfather's
Yeah.
flag. He was a Korean War veteran, and
Mm,
I thank you. The that they had, like, here in America, those people went through the Great Depression. They went
yeah.
through slavery. They went through just the Civil War, because those folks that were their grandparents and parents, like,
Mm,
went through the Civil War and experienced that. So this nation being as early on as it is, right? We our bicentennial was 1976, the year I was born. So that was just
mm,
48 years ago that we turned 200. So we're 248 years old as a country, which, from a country standpoint, given the fact that London's been around forever, right?
mm.
It's just, there's a lot of change and turmoil. Um, So that has an impact on the way families are raised, and of course times
Yeah.
changing, right? So again, not to make light of anything that Vince may or may have done. I can say that, that upbringing absolutely
Hmm.
is an insight. I think a very, 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 very valuable insight as to why, like, as we go forward in these episodes and we start to learn Vince, who he wants us to know, and then the truths that other people are going to tell about him,
Yeah.
into why and who he is, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that he explains it himself, that without actually saying it, reading between the lines, he met his dad at 12, and he says, the first time I see him, I felt like he had a light around him.
Mhm.
So he was an
He was the
escape.
Pope of Madison Square Garden, they called
Exactly.
him.
And he gave him this angelic aura around him. And he said, but he never showed him love, and he never showed him attaboys and pats on the back. And he said that, like, our only conversations were business. Like, from the age of 12, he said, even from that young age, he said everything we spoke about was business and how to move to the next thing. And he said, and like, so when you come from that training, so he's come from abuse to business, business, business. I'm not getting hit anymore. This is where I want to go. I'm reading between the lines. He didn't say this. This is what I'm thinking. This is my escape. So I'm going to put all of my efforts into this. And it's led him into being a self-made billionaire. Like, and
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that horrible beginning has made him the businessman that he is today. I'm gonna not today. I'm gonna say yesterday, but like, it got him to where he is.
Well, think
He
about it
get,
like this. You mentioned you mentioned, I just want to stop you because you
mm,
mentioned the dad thing, and not to breeze past it, because he made a comment where Junior, or Vince, basically says that his dad didn't ever really tell him that he was proud of him until
mm,
very late into the relationship. And
yeah,
the very first time that his and only time that his father ever told him that he loved him was the day before he died.
yeah, yeah. That I've just got to take that in. You know.
I know,
Mm,
so and so to think about, also Vince makes a comment during this, is that, you know those are different times, and different times you can't take today's lens and
no.
look back at and judge at different times, right? Those different times, different standards, different thought processes, just like we were talking about how, it was
Yeah.
common practice at school for corporate punishment.
Me and you have spoke about this so many times, like, because we're similar age. How many times have me and you said that shit won't fly today when we're talking about things we done when we were kids, or things that went on around us, and
Mhm.
it's exactly that. Like, and what you said, our grandparents went through wars. Like, London's still got the scars of the Second
Parents.
World War. London has still got the scars of the Second World War, where planes were coming over and bombing us every night. But we had that. When I say it wasn't all one way, we were sending planes out to Berlin and doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And like this, you can still walk through London streets now and see really old houses with a new house built in the middle, and you know that's where a bomb dropped. Like,
Wow.
just the architecture, you just know, oh, that the date of that house that was built after the war. Even when I was a kid, there was we should call them debris. There was like debris we'd play on, which was wastelands, but it was from bombings, and that's what we'd play on as kids because
Wow.
it was still being built back up. So people that went through that trauma and life, that never went for 2, 3 generations. So me and you probably see the tail end of it, of that, up the way you were brought up. Like,
Yeah.
and like the thing, I mean,
The quote that he
like
said,
he walked up to his father when we was talking about it. He said he was the Pope of Madison Square Garden. He walked up to his father the first day he met him. He went like hello and put his arms out for a cuddle. He said, and I held him, and he just went hello and patted him. Like it was like, I don't know
pat
what
him
is
on the head.
what
Yeah.
is this creature holding me now? Like, you know?
Good boy. Sit,
Yeah,
Ubu,
yeah,
sit.
yeah.
No, I mean, so the quote that I was looking for in my note was that it was yesterday's values cannot be judged by
Mhm,
today's standards. That was Vince's exact quote when they maybe were asking him, or they were talking about, you know, some of the subject matter that he was playing into, like why were you playing into and making light of the war or
mhm.
whatever, right? Some of the maybe, the racial overtones that definitely were allowed to be played out, right? And
Yeah.
the stereotypes and those things that he's going to speak to. And yesterday's, values are not judged by today's standards. But I thought that was a quote that, also gives you insight into the way that he views this reality, and also the way that he justifies and moves on with
Mm,
what it is that he's doing or
yeah,
done.
yeah. I mean, it's just like what you were saying, like when he said he was proud of him. The first time he actually said he was proud of him was when he took over the territories. And he was saying about the other promoters. He was like, at first, he was saying to him, like, you don't do that. I'm getting death threats. And people were saying you're going to end up in the bottom of the river. And he was saying other promoters must really love the bottom of rivers.
Bottom of the river, yeah.
and but at first, his father was saying, "You don't do this, don't do that. You're rocking the boat. You're rocking the boat." And and Vince actually said, "Fuck him," and carried on doing it.
Yeah.
And then once he had sort of mission accomplished, his father actually turned around to him and said, "Yeah, you was right to do what you done, and I'm proud of you." Like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
sorry, I'm frozen on your screen, aren't I?
yes, you are.
Yeah, so just carry on. I can hear you and everything else, and hopefully it corrects itself in a minute.
Okay.
I'm looking at a spinning beach ball at the moment.
All
Oh,
good.
always happens. I can drop out and drop back in. Give me 10 seconds.
Yeah, we're good. So there's a point in the episode where, to give you some backstory for the folks that are listening, Linda and Vince, they got together when they were 13 and 15. So Linda was 13 and Vince was 15. Uh, so Linda and Vince have been together through the beginning, and I think probably that's why Linda's, stuck with him through everything, right? Uh, and to also speak to when his dad made the deal, he first gave him the Bangor, Maine territory to take over and run the operations. And through the rapid success that Vince was able to achieve in the Bangor, Maine territory, uh, his dad took notice of that, and it put him in position to. At this point, there was a day that Vince recalls where his father, he witnessed his father getting a whole bunch of grief from his announcer. And basically, there was their TV broadcast and taping, and the announcer was trying to get more money out of his father. And he was watching his dad sit there and play with a stack of quarters and thinking and thinking and thinking, because the announcer said, if you don't give me this money, gave him the ultimatum and said, if you don't give me this money, then I'm not going to announce. And his dad pretty much looked up, and Vince Jr. came over and was like, Dad, what are you going to do? He said, you're going to announce. And that was Vince's first entry into, being in production. And everybody said that he was a horrible announcer, and he wasn't good. And, everybody's first attempts at everything is rough, right? But it is really interesting at that point to hear what he has to say about what he did focus on, because he knew, even by his own admission, that he wasn't the best announcers, but he really focused and leaned in on the whole fact that he wanted to establish the story. Um, and that's how he figured it out, and what later developed into how he became successful and built what we know is the product today. He wanted to figure out how to translate the story that's being told inside the ring, right? Really, really focus on that. And how he did that, he really breaks it down and shares with you his methodology on how he goes about. So he says that he's going to establish the environment. That's the very first step, right? And then you need to create some very interesting characters inside the environment. So anytime you join a or start watching a broadcast, they will immediately, the very first thing they say, they'll show you the exterior of the buildings and the location that they are in. And he does that, and they still do that. They'll say, all right, folks, we're coming to you live from Madison Square Garden, or wherever. And they're setting the stage, and then you have some characters. And coming to you tonight, we've got Undertaker versus, I don't know, Jake the Snake Roberts. That was a horrible thing. Mick Foley, Hell in a Cell, right? uh and they set the stage and tell you a little bit of backstory for the people that aren't necessarily um, part of the story. There we go. Danny's back. So he'll tell a little bit of.
I've been listening. I've had my laptop open. So
No, I know you. You're good. You're good. So yeah, I mean, telling the story as far as I was riffing as much as we could. This is live. We're recording
yeah,
this live, and we appreciate everybody that's viewing live, and everybody on the replay. Hey man, we recorded it live. Cut us some slack.
yeah,
Kayfabe. Anyway, so
yeah.
what do you think about like that? How he breaks down and really lays out how he starts building these characters? Because I have all of the bullet points, because I kept pausing it. I mean, there were so many times I'm just like, oh, I got to pause it because I have to write down exactly
I
what
was
he's saying.
doing exactly the same thing.
It's so much that's like really builds, and to this day is kind of how wrestling is still done.
Yeah, we were saying about building the characters. So, like, we were talking about different things in the news and different, like, it was like shock and awe, wasn't it? It was how can I get a reaction? And so you would have the everyday man characters, the ones that went to work, and you'd have the evil bosses, whatever area you was in. If you was going to a working class area, you would have the evil boss. If you was going, you would have the trash man who was the fan favorite, or and he would be fighting against the tax man. Or if you had everyone hates the fucking dentist. Do you know what I mean? So Kane would come out dressed as Isaac Yankem and like the character building like that. But it's yeah, it's just like Harry. Like we said, the best way to do it. I mean, I'm going back over old ground, but the best way to describe him was P.T. Barnum, and dressing up his show and his characters that way. You know, like into the Greatest Show, the Greatest Showman is just that way. I mean, did we cover how he got hold of the company in the first place from his father?
How he got the company? I was
Yeah.
getting ready to. I did touch to when you first dropped
When I
out.
first dropped, that's what we was
Yeah,
going with. So did
you
you
know
go
that
through the whole 4 payments thing? That if he didn't make the payment, then
we did. I did not.
mm.
I did not get to that part. I did skip past that part.
So
Yes. So yes,
he
he set him up to fail.
he set him up to fail with a 4 payment thing that he wasn't going to be able to make payments of, but he did. He did make the payments, but the original person he was going to, which caught my eye earlier, and I don't think they touched on it enough. The person who was meant to have bought the company was Gorilla Monsoon,
Yes.
and he also became his booth partner. They were color commentary and play by play together for all them years,
Gorilla
and apparently
Monsoon was
he
my
had beef with him.
favorite.
Yeah, but
Gor-
Gorilla Monsoon had beef with him over it. They said
yes.
but on
I didn't
camera,
know that.
no, nor did I, because on camera they look like uh not the best of
Yeah.
friends, but they gelled. Like they was like doing their
Gorilla
jobs.
Monsoon was professional. I mean,
Mm,
Gorilla Monsoon, you didn't like, you would think that everything, he was just happy and happy and happy, how everything,
mm.
and sold. It gave it that credibility and was, man, Gorilla Monsoon was one of my all-time and is one of my all-time favorite announcers. And when it comes to it, because definitely he was the voice of my early childhood wrestling,
Mm.
especially that
Yeah,
golden era when everything was just booming, the WrestleMania 1 and 2
yeah.
era, him and Mean Gene Okerlund, and
Him,
Vince.
him and Jesse.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Gorilla! Like when he would fucking get the box of him, and he would go, "Oh, Gorilla! Like get with the times!" Like like
Yeah.
Jesse's got earrings and fucking feather boas on him.
Feather boas and like
Yeah,
what?
yeah, he was great when he was absolutely
Yeah.
great. But that yeah, but yeah, like going back to what we were saying, like professionalism of like because you've now got to work with because they must have seen him like that's the boss's kid,
Yes.
and I can relate to that. Like I'm the boss's kid, like growing up, and I can relate to people like underestimating me because I'm the boss's kid and just
Yes.
thinking I've got the job, not because I'm good at what I do, because I'm the boss's kid, which initially I did get the job because I'm the boss's kid, but it made me work even harder to get good at what I do.
Hmm.
It, there's an opposite reaction to that. I could have just sat back and had an easy ride, or I could work my bollocks off, which I did, and the same with
Well, it depends on what
both of my
type of
brothers.
dad you had that would, because like if I was My dad would not allow me, nor would I allow my son an easy ride. I would
No.
expect more of them than I would expect of my employees, because I
Mm.
mean,
You've got to
you got
expect more
shine, you
of
got
me. Mm,
this is yeah, man, like
mm,
you got to be all in, baby, because I'm giving you a position,
mm,
and if you want to inherit this, then you need to
mm.
feel as passionately about this as I do.
I remember my first day at work. This is how it went. The first hour of my work when I left school. I left school. I was still living at home, obviously. Jumped in my dad's van. He went, right, we're going to a job. And it was his job. All the men there worked for him. And I got to the job and he gave me a bag of tools with all state of the art tools in there that I needed to do the job I was doing that day.
Hmm.
So there was about £500 worth of tools in there. So $700 tools back in 1989 or whatever it was. So it's a lot of money. And he gave me that bag of tools, and I went, "Oh, thanks, Dad." He went, "Don't thank me." He went, "You now owe me 500 quid. You're paying me back this much a week out of your money until it's paid." And he went, "And by the way, what time do you call this?" And looked at his watch, and I went, "Oh, it's 8:30." He went, "You start at 8. You're half hour late." And I went, "But I came in with you." He went, "Don't come in with me. You get yourself here. I'm the boss. I get here when I want." And that was the first conversation I had with him at work. And then we were both going to the same place each day, but I would get up a couple of hours earlier, jump on the train and get there. So that was my introduction into work, which
Hmm.
I've always got myself to work ever since and never relied on anyone else to pick me up, take me anywhere, or do anything for me.
Hmm.
And it's the same thing. Like, I'm not Vince McMahon, don't get me wrong, but I can relate to being the boss's son and sitting there with Gorilla Monsoon when Gorilla Monsoon was meant to have took over the company, and now this his son's appeared from nowhere, built himself up through the ranks, and took what I thought was going to be mine. That must have been a hard pill for him to swallow, especially when Vince ran away with the success that he had as well. Like, because you must have thought for a while that could have been me, like that.
Yeah.
He must. I wouldn't say resentment, but there must have been a thong there. Like something just niggling at you. Like that.
Yeah.
You know. But I don't think Gorilla Monsoon would have. It would have just been another territory.
I think Gorilla Monsoon saw what Vince was doing and saw that uh how it was blowing up, and was like, well, like you said, do I go to the other territory, or do I just go ahead and continue to stay attached to this
Mm,
and see how this plays out, and I wonder if, because they haven't got into it, but I wonder if Vince, or his dad senior had him pay, or agree to pay him something decent, or if he took care of him or something. Like
mm,
I would hope that he did do that, but I mean, Vince even said Gorilla Monsoon didn't look at him as someone that was even, a competitor,
yeah,
but Vince said he should have.
he should have. Yeah, he should have. Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
was,
Mm.
you know,
He actually said
no,
that. Yeah. Mm,
yeah, no one assumed that he was even in the picture to
mm,
do that whatsoever. But
because they
yeah,
probably
man.
see him as the boss's kid and never see him as a threat. I just thought he was someone we have to put up with.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, dude. So I mean, that whole aspect, I mean, Vince, it shows you how much that Vince, I think, recognized, coming from, and myself coming from meager beginnings as well. And when you when you get an opportunity, you don't squander it.
No.
you're gracious. You come from a thing of gratitude. When you get anything of value or worth, you like those tools, but
Mm,
you or that toy that that you really, really, really you knew that and you knew not to ask your mom and dad for, but you really wanted it, so you were hinting at it and would hope that they would pick up on the hint, and they would get it when they could, and when they did, I, I had friends that take when they got their Nintendos, they were breaking them and raging and stuff like that, and then when I got mine, that thing, it was the holy grail. Like, I handled it like a fine piece of china.
mm,
I don't know about, if I know you come from the same background, so I know
yeah.
there was stuff like you didn't trash your toys or your GI
No,
Joes or your Star Wars figures or anything.
no,
Like,
no.
yeah,
You just reminded me as well. I remember one Christmas, um, my dad was bought me some my mum and dad bought me wrestling figures. And do you remember the ones with the arms up like this, and you got the ring and everything else?
yeah, those
And
were amazing. My parents got it me too, and I
my
was
mum and dad couldn't get the ring anywhere because it was the hot toy. They couldn't, and my dad built me the ring.
that's
He built,
awesome.
yeah, I remember it now. It was so a tin we would have biscuits in, like, and it was a metal box like this, and he
Yeah.
put like four posts and he put some ropes around and everything on this thing. But because it was made of tin, when I would have the wrestlers hit the other wrestlers, it made that noise, that boom, like
Mhm.
that. It made that great noise. And yeah,
Yes.
it just reminded me of that. It's just come to me like while we're
Yeah.
sitting here talking about this.
Well, you just reminded me when you said your dad built you that. I
Mm,
remember my dad when I had all my action figures and started really accumulating, like and he saw that I was taking care of my stuff, like my Star Wars, and I started accumulating GI Joe as well. He built me a desk for me to be able to work on, put like my stereo on, and also uh, I could put my action figures and stuff on. Like, and he
mm,
did the measurements and built it up and everything like that.
that's cool.
And I had that until they like bought me my first like furniture set that I had all the way until I moved in with my wife. Like when we consolidated and got married, I had that furniture dresser and desk, like because I kept it clean, But yeah,
Mm,
it that those things like that, you appreciate and you
yeah.
hold on to, right? So those are the memories that you get, and I think that that's why he was as opportunistic and had
Yeah.
such a drive, because they said about coming from nothing and then at 12 years old you're
Mm,
you're at the age you can realize, like, man, I want things to be different, you know what I mean? And then getting that opportunity, right, and then going for it.
mm, yeah. Like he explains his first part where he was saying it's the abusive father. He explains it as you put up with it until you didn't have to anymore. Like, so you endure, like, it basically made him tough, and, I know that's such a stupid thing to say because of the trauma that goes with it, does a lot of damage as well, but it gives you the impression of toughness and endurance and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not saying that's the right way, don't beat your kids and make them billionaires, that's not what I'm saying, but he was accrediting that to that when he said, "You endure it until you don't have to anymore." Like, today's different. We're going back, we're going in a circle, but today is different. But that's how he see that as
Hmm.
an older man. Like he's 2 generations above us, 3 generations above us,
Hmm.
and that's how he see it. But
Yeah, man.
yeah,
So
mm,
I mean, it's different. So I mean, that just explains, further into how, he acquired and gobbled up all those territories and
yeah,
went across. And you mentioned earlier how, they were telling you, end up in the end of the river, and
mm,
not to go circular, but and to go forward. His ability to grab, they go into how Vince, how he was able to succeed was he was able to go into all of the territories that already had these really larger than life characters that they spent a lot of
mm,
time developing and getting momentum, and people bought in, right? And he went in and just was able to pluck all of the best guys and amass like an all-star team and an all-star roster from all the territories, and then started putting on shows in the territories,
mm,
and it just completely crushed everything.
mm. And he could see that TV was the way forward. So while he was doing them shows, it shows you interviewing Greg the Hammer Valentine, and he
Mhm.
says, "I hear you're going to go from territory to territory to territory and take over all of." But basically, Vince had bought them off or took them over already, but he's selling it as, so you're going to go from, and he was advertising all the places they're going to be and take over all of these territories, like selling it like that on the TV. Even like we were saying, blurred reality. He was taking over them territories, but he was making it sound like that wrestler was going to go around and take over. And it was great. It was good to see a young Greg the Hammer, because he was already
Yeah,
old as shit when I started. When I realised who he was, and that was
yeah,
him and Honky Tonk Man were the tag team, weren't they? Your favorite,
yeah,
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 with
man.
Jimmy Hart. Mm,
Jimmy Hart was a great manager. I mean, speaking of classic managers, and I know we're going to get into that probably in a further episode, but yeah, yeah, Jimmy Hart was
mm,
crazy. Yeah, larger than life. Uh, you know, uh, they mentioned what I loved that captured me also that he did was is he started the talk show, and I grew up
mm,
watching. It was really cool because when my parents would allow me to stay up when as a kid, because I had a bedtime, and there wasn't, and as a youngin, I if I was able to stay up past sundown, or even in the summertime, I'd be going. I remember like preschool, kindergarten, going to sleep when it's still light out, because my bedtime was like 7:30 or something, right? 8:30 or 8, and it was still light out, right? So,
yeah.
uh, being able to get up to stay late on those nights and watch Johnny Carson, and David Letterman, and those late night shows. I thought that was like that was cool. Like I was, that was
Mm,
everything. And seeing those and loved watching that. And then Vince created his own talk show
yeah.
and had
Mm,
integrations with Letterman and all of that stuff, but he presented the wrestlers as a late night talk show, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
mm. And um that talk show, it was the coolest thing ever. And we never got to see the talk show here, but
Mm-mm.
Heenan was always ripping on it on Wrestling Challenge. Heenan would always like say that the Rockettes are ugly, and like like the girls on there.
Heenan was amazing.
Yeah,
Oh
he
my god.
because we would all, like we just never see this show, and but Heenan would just go, uh, like he was graphic. He'd go, "Look at this dog. She could be one of the Rockettes." Like he would talk, like he would just fucking blow people up, wouldn't he? Like with his verbals. Oh man, great. But like you said, the TV show was. It also got people outside of wrestling to take wrestling seriously. So like it attracted like when they were showing you the parts of WrestleMania and they say to Andy Warhol, "What did you think, Andy?" And he goes, "Oh yes, I thought it was very exciting," like how he does. And then
He's like, I'm blown away or speechless, you know what I
I'm
mean?
absolutely, but he's deadpan, and he's just got that. He's just got that too much LSD look about him, and then they had Liberace.
My grandmother, one of my grandmothers was it. I remember having to sit through on anytime Liberace had a special on TV. She was there. I mean, they went. My grandfather and grandmother would go and see Liberace anytime he was in town. It was mandatory. They
Mm,
didn't miss a show. Like they were them old ladies. They loved their Liberace, and that was a big thing when he
mm.
was on WrestleMania. Is like, it's like, wow, Liberace's there. You
Yeah,
had Ray Charles, you had Muhammad Ali, all
Aretha
of these.
Franklin.
Aretha, man, that performance, my
Mm,
God,
mm.
I can still listen to her
In the
sing.
open air, like
Mm.
on shitty old microphones they had back then. Like amazing.
She grew up in the church, and and in the church back then, they were, these single room shotgun churches, and there was not any PA systems
Mm,
at all. There were no microphones. You were your microphone, and you had to also project over the people, and if they had drums or anything. So I mean, that's the reason why her voice was so strong, and a lot of the early R&B divas, I guess we can call them, had such powerful voices and can bring it. Gladys Knight and Whitney and all, they came up in the church and singing because they had to sing from a diaphragm and project with that power and strength and confidence and
mm,
go right. So that's why you're going to get me into music mode. You don't want that to happen. So
no.
anyway, my apologies.
But music's such a big part of why Vince is big as well.
Yes.
Like that's another thing that he put on there. You said about Hogan, that was the first like song written for a wrestler. Like he knew the importance of intro music. Whereas like a lot of the times before then, they would just come out to nothing, or they'd already be in the ring when the camera went to them. Or I believe it was. I'm gonna mess his name up because I'm terrible with names. Is it Michael Hayes?
Hmm.
Like he was one of the and
P.S. Michael Hayes.
Jimmy Hart. They
Mm.
were they were huge influences in getting music into wrestling. Them three, but we're going away from this documentary. That's another that's another episode.
Yeah,
That's another
absolutely.
episode. Mm,
So I mentioned it earlier about how, traumatizing the Hulk Hogan episode of the Saturday Night Live integration,
mm,
how we've talked about how he blurred the reality of everything, and that was the big lead up into the WrestleMania, and they pretty much, leveraged everything that they absolutely had, and mortgaged the house and
yeah,
everything. But, he built the scripts up so well, and he mentioned how it was important with Cyndi Lauper that he wanted to focus on bringing some credibility to the women's wrestling,
Yeah.
which he said that, by his own words, I'm not going to use what he said because I can't remember exactly what it was, but was like, women's wrestling was not taken serious, or even it was an afterthought, and was just like
Mm.
whatever, right? And it was, he wanted to build credibility around it, and interest and excitement. So he went and got a legitimate wrestler, and he attached Cindy Lauper to her, and Cindy Lauper was the manager, to
Yeah.
that baby face, and she was gonna fight for
Her
him for
name
her.
was Wendy Richter.
Wendy Richter, yes, correct. Thank you.
Mhm.
And Wendy Richter was the shit. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like they sold it, and you had all of these storylines, and you think about how he attached. Hulk Hogan wanted to do Rocky, the Rocky movie,
Yeah.
right? And Vince Senior said no, and if you do, you're fired. And he went and did the Rocky movie and went to AWA. And when Vince
Yeah.
took over, went and got him back and told the whole thing about the territories, and he was all in, and utilized that crossover for WrestleMania and set all of that up, man. Like how he got the Sheik belt off of the Sheik and transitioned
Mm.
into, and this was all led into all of those storylines. He was already doing storyline and themed
Mm.
integration all the way at the very beginning. The things that are
Mm.
the core foundation of wrestling, he did that.
Mm. That's how he got T, Mr. T, as well. Hulk
Yes.
went and made friends with Mr. T, and now he's got another. Now he's got another wrestler. Now he's got another star.
That was in the same Rocky, because they were
Mm.
in the same,
In
that was
Rocky 3,
Rocky
yeah.
3. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Which
that's
was
that's
my
how
favorite Rocky.
that's how Mr. T got involved, because Hulk made friends. He brought Hulk back. He brought Mr. T with him. And then Mr. T also got the mainstream pop, like we call it pop culture today, don't it? Back then it was mainstream, like interested in getting him on talk shows and getting Hulk on talk shows and getting more exposure to the product.
Yeah.
Um, hmm,
I mean, that was brilliant. The master. I don't know how big was Mr. T, because I mean he was, I mean, for me he was everything with the A Team, and just the the appearance in Rocky, and I thought Mr. T was the coolest thing ever, man.
Mr. T was big here. Mr. T, B.A. Baracus,
Mm-hmm.
and Rocky Free.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. T
Clubber
actually had,
Lang.
yeah, Clever Lang. It's my favorite. And what's
Pain.
hey, what's your prediction for the fight? When, like I
Pain.
said to
That
you,
was the hardest shit.
yeah, I'll remember. See, this is what I'm saying to you earlier. I love the hills, so I loved Mr. T. I loved it when Mr. T beat the shit out of Rocky. Like, like when I remember laughing hard when Mr. T turns around. He's doing a press conference, and he Clubber Lang, he turns around, and he sees Adrian, and he goes, "Yo, Mr. Balboa, why don't you come over with me tonight? And I'll show you what a real man's like." When he does that, I was like, Mr. T's the man. But Mr. T had his own TV show here called World's Craziest Fools. And it was basically a video clip show with
Yeah.
people met like Foul Army. It was that, but he called it
Mhm.
World's Craziest Fools. Yeah, Mr. T was huge over here. Really
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That was that that so that whole thing, there was, so the homie Demiza is calls it synergy marketing, you know.
Hmm.
Consistency breeds familiarity, familiarity
Hmm.
breeds, synergy, and just there's all of these different things that that Vince incorporated that anybody can use in a business structure. And he was forward thinking in the he created the pay-per-view event, right? And
Mm,
really helped to be a leader, because yes, there were boxing the very when I worked at my former job, uh cable history, like you part of you being able to even work at the cable, you had to take a test that if you did not pass, they would not allow you to have the job. But you had to learn the history of cable, like from its inception, like from how communication started and how everything, telecommunications and everything. And the Thriller in Manila was the very first, like, quote unquote, pay-per-view and like broadcast on closed circuit. And there were other boxing matches and some type of very big events that people would go to an arena. So where your
mm,
professional hockey or basketball team, or the arena area, and they would put up a large TV and project it, a large screen and project it, and people would sit in seats and look at the TV. And I remember, like, that was a huge thing for folks to be able, like, the kids that went to school that would come back and said that they were either lying. Majority of the time they were lying, or their dad went, or their mom went and they didn't go, or what I mean, you were jealous of them all, because I was like,
mm,
man, I wish I could do that, 'cause they were like these really big events, right?
mm.
So Smokey even agrees they were really big.
Well,
Uh,
that's Smokey.
yeah. So anyway,
So we would get the closed circuit stuff, but we would get so for our football. So for away games, they would have the screens at the home club. So if West Ham was playing away, we could go over to Upson Park and watch the away match on the screens. But because they wouldn't have them on the TV back then at all. Like they just wouldn't have them on because the football clubs thought that it would take away from ticket sales. Which was completely absurd. Like, but that's what they used to think. Yeah, so we had the closed circuit stuff for that as well. But yeah, man. I mean, the fact when Vince is saying as well. So after he done Rocky 3, Hogan got the flavor for movies, and Vince says he said I thought I was going to lose him to Hollywood, so I said I'll make a movie, and I can't remember the movie. Is it something Thunder? I can't remember.
it I think it was No Holds Barred, was it?
No, it's before No Holds Barred. There was a really shitty movie that they made, which because Vince says I know nothing about the movie industry as well. Like I thought I did, but I didn't. And they made this. They made a terrible movie. I can't remember what it was called. I really can't. But yeah, no, I've got myself. That's it. Mind blank. Anyway, so yeah, so but he could see the.
I remember the movie. I can't remember the
I
name.
can't remember. It was called. I
Sorry.
think it's called like something Thunder or something like Rolling Thunder or
Not
something
well.
like that.
His name was Thunder Lips and Rocky.
Yeah, Thunder Lips. Yeah,
But I
in
think,
the flesh, baby.
because I mean, I think Pam Badass even mentioned it
But the No
earlier.
Holds Barred.
Yeah, wasn't No Holds Barred had Zeus, and
Yeah,
which
tiny in it.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, tiny in it, right? So that
Mm.
was that was the one
No, I'm
that
sure. I don't know. The one I see looked more
yeah.
like it will look more like a revenge movie. You know, like a vigilante type movie. I'm sure we'll find. I'm sure we'll
Oh, I
find it.
remember that, the army movie. Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. He
Mm.
was he was like a GI Joe type
Yeah.
character or whatever. I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
Ooh, I got to remember what that one is, but Well, think about this. We talked about it on the sesh, uh,
Mm,
and the lead up to WrestleMania.
mm,
There was a couple of things they had mortgaged everything and put doubled down on everything,
mm.
and they have some incidents, some
Yeah.
scandals, some
Mm,
things that really made it where it couldn't almost didn't happen. And they both involve the media, blurring the lines of reality even that much more for me as a child, because they was fucking people up, excuse my language, children, but they were destroying these cats.
mm. Yeah, I mean the David Schwartz one when he slapped the reporter in the corridor. When
Think it's
yeah,
fake?
you think this is fake? What? Oh, that. Do you think this is fake? But it's as well in the documentary. Um, Tony Atlas says that. So what was happening? Hogan starts telling the story first about this particular reporter, and I can't for the life of me. It's David Schwartz is one of him. I can't remember the name of the reporter. So he was to build up WrestleMania. He was following Hulk around doing a piece on Hulk Hogan. He said, and as they're walking along, he says to Hulk, "Is it true that you use razor blades to cut your own head?" And Hogan went, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "I was protecting the business." He said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "I went back to Vince and said, this guy's going to hurt us. He's asking insider questions that he shouldn't be asking, and he's not Thunder in Paradise."
And Richie
And
says Suburban Commando too, which
Suburban Commando, yeah.
I remember both of those.
So he says he goes some reason he goes back to Vince and says this guy ain't doing this piece to help us. He's trying to dig up dirt and expose us. So Vince walks into the locker room and says, "I wish someone would do something about this guy in front of all the boys." He said, "I really
Man,
wish that someone would do something about him." But he never says go and do something. He just says that out loud, that sentence. So
man,
that's when Dave Schwartz takes it upon himself to, "You think that's fake? You think that's fake?" And busts his eardrum. He actually busted the guy's eardrum. The guy sued him for it for loss of hearing and
I know, man.
stuff
That
like
was
that.
crazy. I
Mm,
mean, when he did that, I remember that being on the news, and I remember seeing it at my grandparents' house because they watched the news nonstop, and it made either the local news or it definitely made like the national news or something, right? Because I
mm,
remember seeing it and paying attention, like it grabbing my attention while we were eating dinner because they were
yeah,
mentioning wrestling, right? I was like, oh, and then it was like, oh, and dude, I was sold. I was like, hell yeah, slap his ass. It's real,
yeah,
as a kid, like he's being disrespectful, get him. That's and grandma and grandpa were like, oh, they knew that they were like, man, and I I was arguing with him like, man, that's what he gets to say, you know, 'cause
yeah.
yeah.
It was protecting the business. It was what they done. And I mean, the other one was when Mr. T and Hoke was on the show with Richard
Mhm.
Belzer.
Yep, we mentioned that on the session. That was the
Mm,
one we played. Man, that right there, I remember watching that live. I watched that live too. I mean,
mm,
because I got permission to stay up because they had made big commercials and announcements about it throughout the week and hyping up that Hulk Hogan and Mr. T were going to be on this late night show. And we've already talked about how, like watching Carson and all those things were something that, I thought was cool and my parents did. So I asked permission and they gave me permission to watch it. And I remember like, oh man, he put him in a sleeper hole for real. And then seeing dude's head bounce like pop pop and
Yeah.
like dude being knocked out. I was like, oh, see, wrestling's real, all of this stuff like just continued to wind me up as a kid, just again blurring reality wrestling. We're just going to continue to hit you with it until you just remember to hit the follow button, just like Becca Boo said, uh, on Blurred Reality Wrestling, y'all. Right. So, but no, I mean, that was just amazing. I was just hook, line, and sinker sold. And this is all leading up to WrestleMania because these guys sued.
Yeah. Yeah, both of them did, yeah. And both got settlements as well.
87 and 93. The first one that
Mm,
got settlements was the first dude that got slapped, which was what
mm.
was the reporter's name again?
I can't
Do
remember the
you
reporter's name, but he
yeah,
got slapped
I
by David Schwartz.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that guy got settlement. They settled in 87 and then Richard Belcher
Mhm.
settled in 93. So it happened in 84 and
Yeah, that's to
like
wait a little while for that settlement.
it
Mm,
took a while, you know what I mean? But he sued everybody. Like he sued they both sued everybody they could.
mm.
Sued them all. They got litigious. But man, that
Makes you think did was that their goal in the first place?
no, no, I do not think. I think that those guys didn't realize that, because I think the people that don't appreciate wrestling or make light of wrestling truly appreciate exactly
Mm.
everything that is going on with wrestling. I mean, they are, like we said earlier, telling a soap opera. And yeah, the matches are predetermined, but the physical contest
Right.
itself, those are
Mm.
real tables, those are real falls, those are real, the punches. Yes, some of them are pulled, some of them are not, some of them you,
I was watching Sheamus last week. I said to you, didn't I? Even now, he's still landing his punches like
he's
he's
stiff.
stiff as fuck. Yeah, yeah. Like they're not. If he's pulling them punches and he's the greatest actor I've ever seen, give that man an Oscar. Like he's laying them in. He's laying them in. But yeah. And then after that, WrestleMania.
Well,
After the build up, after the build up with the slaps and the things and going to the talk shows, they even done a Saturday Night Live. Didn't they host SNL?
yes,
Mr. T and
sir.
Hogan
Yes,
and
sir. And
Mr. T had his bendy bar.
I
Uh,
got to stay up for that.
mm, mm, mm.
And
See,
yeah, the
we never got SNL.
you never got never.
Nah, no, we did get SNL, but it would be in the middle of the night on TV and not advertised. It wasn't like because it wasn't our Saturday night, was it? It was America's Saturday night. We had another Saturday night thing on at the time. So for us to see SNL, it would be clip shows and things like that, like on
Mhm.
obscure times just to fill time. So like we would see Belushi and I can't remember. I can't remember. I'm terrible with names. The guy from Ghostbusters and like
That
we
Aykroyd.
yeah we'd see all them like but
Yeah,
it'd be clip shows. It wouldn't be the full show from start to finish.
Chevy Chase and,
Mm.
Bill Murray
Bill
and,
Murray, yeah,
all of
yeah.
those. You saw the old classic ones. I
Mm.
got you. Well, yeah, you guys did miss out, but of course I missed out on, and it would make sense, of course,
I
because you
mean,
guys had your own programming and we had ours,
exactly.
right? So,
When you was
and,
watching SNL, we was watching Benny Hill.
right. And
You
I
know,
was watching Benny Hill, sitting in my
Mm.
underwears with my little metal TV tray that like was a little TV tray that had like these little arms that felt metal
Mm.
arms that fell out that were like you could put your they would sit on in your lap on the floor, right? You know what I mean?
But they
And
have the
they
little
were like
segments,
Dukes
didn't
of
it? So
well,
you'd have your
no, it didn't
beans
have
in one
no,
segment
this
and your toast in
no,
another
no,
and that.
no, 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 no. I didn't have any segments in it. It was like just a little metal TV tray that
Mm,
you would be able to set your food on, your plate on, and stuff like that, like your little glass and stuff in front of the TV
mm,
and watch your stuff. So I would have like Smokey and the Bandit, Dukes of Hazzard, Star
mm,
Wars,
mm.
all of that stuff, and they were really cool. Shout out to Mama Boogie in the house. Much love to you. That's my amazing wife. Love you.
Hello.
Uh uh so like we definitely those were all memories as far as Benny Hill goes, but those were things that made everything so real to me as a child because these wrestlers were in character or as in
Yeah.
kayfabe and were integrated in the stuff that was outside of the stuff that I was only watching. My parents wasn't really watching that. They would watch the big thing. Like once I started really freaking out and running around the house and becoming Hulk myself and jumping on the floor off of my dresser on the shit, and making noise and destroying things as a kid, you know, I it it was real because
Yeah.
it was in real life.
Yeah. It's like watching these monsters run around, and it, it, it was comic books come to life. I mean, like my guy was Ultimate Warrior. Like,
Mm,
I loved Ultimate Warrior. Like WrestleMania 6 was my WrestleMania. That's the one that like resonates with me. It was like a year-long build up, and I couldn't wait for it. Like we was all talking about it in the school playground, and it was the shit. It was just, yeah. Like we're going back to our first episode. It was the origin story. It's what got us. The colors, the lights, the the live soap opera, which is
ab-
wrestling.
absolutely. So, that kind of the that wraps up the
Mm.
episode of episode 1 on Netflix. Now, all 6 of them are available to binge watch. Uh I have only watched episode 1.
Hmm.
I've addressed my full attention to that, and I didn't want to get tainted with any and get off track and mix things and blur things. So I knew for me to be able to get through this, but there's a couple of notes that I wanted to say because you
Yeah.
mentioned the toys, but the merch, right? So the merch, and they showed a bunch of different ones, and like you mentioned, the dolls, and my mom and dad, man, they got me all of the wrestling action figures, and I would accumulate them over time, and the big stiff rubber ones, right? And I did end up getting the ring. They were able to get me the ring for, I think, like my birthday, and I got like a ring and a couple of dudes. And I told you, we talked about it earlier, like the thumb. They had the wrestlers that fit on your thumbs and all of those things. But they showed the Sports Illustrated magazine cover too, and I remember I was like, I had forgotten about that, but I held on to that for so long as a kid, trying to keep that, like that that Sports Illustrated in the best condition I could. Just I had forgot about that.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I remember playing with them wrestling figures forever, man. It was just, yeah, just I'm still thinking now of the ring that my father made, and like the noise it made, and like the fun we had playing with them, and the fact that he'd already tried to get the effort my mum and dad must have gone to trying to get the ring that they wanted to buy, and they must have gone to this shop and that shop and that shop, and then we're right, that's it, I'm making one. I can imagine him say it. I'll make a better one than them. Anyway, like with my dad making it. And
Listen, my mom and dad always did the best they could to get me the things that I wanted as a kid. And, you know, my mom and dad bust their ass to get those things, because it was and it is tough as a parent, and it's nothing that you can understand until you become a parent, to know that you just want to give your kids everything, and you know, and be able to fulfill their wants and needs. But of course, you don't want to spoil them as well. You want to teach them and ground them, but you got to do it in the best way you can with the best of your abilities, and you're gonna fuck up and make mistakes and have regrets even the moment after you do it, and you don't get to know those things until you're in the moment, and that's life, right? So
yeah,
just like doing these podcasts, man, you know, this has been fun. I don't know about
yeah,
you, but have
yeah.
you
That
had some fun, man?
I really have. Yeah, I really have, and I think a few people in the chat have as well. So
Yeah,
let's continue.
Unchained.
Let's continue doing it. Unchanged there, and what do you call us? Pans. It's called as pansies.
He called us pansies, but that wouldn't be Unchained. I wouldn't expect
Oh,
anything
if
less
he
from
turned up and said, "Hi guys, this is a good show," I would ban him for 10 minutes.
Becca Boo's been with us. Mama Boogie, my wife's in there. Pan Badass has been with us. New Zealand in the house. Richie's been with us throughout the way.
I had
Yes, man.
Miss Joy gift a sub earlier. Thanks for
Miss
that.
Joy, thank you so much, Miss Joy. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Birdie was in the house for a little
Birdie.
bit. Yeah, we had a bunch of people in the house, man.
Yeah.
Herbs was in the house.
Herbs one. Done our music for us.
Yes, did our music, which, you know what I'm saying? Hold on. Speaking of that, let's let me
What
go
up,
ahead.
Pan?
Let me let me yeah, man. So yo, it's been a episode. I can't say another episode. It's been episode 1 and 2 for y'all that's been live, and episode 2 for you that are watching this on the replay on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us on Twitch, Blurred Reality Wrestling on Twitch, Blurred Reality Wrestling on Twitch, Blurred Reality Wrestling on YouTube, Ghost Boogie 66 on Twitch, and Danny Chaz on Twitch. Danny Chaz, shout outs, fam.
So we got Danny Chaz on Twitch, follow Danny Chaz on YouTube's. I got the Chilled on Sunday podcast starting the same time as this one, 9 p.m. UK on Sunday in the afternoon for the Americas. And shout out to all my usual suspect brothers. Shout out to Richie D in the chat. I'm glad you enjoyed it, mate. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Pan. Becca Boo, it's always good to see you. I'll see you on Sunday as well. Unchained. And thanks again, Miss Joy, for the gift sub. Any gifts, any subs and bits thrown towards us will go back into the streams. I love you all. Thanks for coming. I'm Danny Chaz.
Absolutely, yo. And I want to say thank you to Danny Chaz. It's been fucking great being able to do this. I cussed, you know what I mean? I am still slipping, but I am trying to make this as PG-13 as possible, all right? So, but check this out. If it wasn't for my parents and my grandparents encouraging me and allowing me to watch wrestling, I got to say shout out to them. I got to say shout out to my son and daughter for getting me back into wrestling. Much love to them, and much love to Mama Boogie for allowing me to do all of this time-wise in the family and everyone's family. And thank you so much to each and every single one of you guys that are following, new here, watching a new podcast, Blurred Reality Wrestling. We do this every single Friday at this same time. Danny Chaz, what time is it, London time?
9 p.m. UK, London time.
And then it's going to be 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Mountain, 1 p.m. Pacific here in the States. You know what I
That's
mean?
correct.
Yes. And then
You bang
I
on.
got a big shout out to my usual suspect and B-Boys Underground family. You can see us coming up this Monday on Ghost Boogie 66, twitch.tv, and then YouTube, the usual suspect sesh. And then, of course, B-Boys Underground, Ghost Boogie 66 on twitch.tv, and also B-Boys Underground on youtube.com. That's Wednesday. So much love to y'all. Keep it positive, keep it pushing, keep persevering. And shout out to Herbs One on the beat. We are out. Peace.
Bye-bye.